Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In this episode, we are talking about one of the most polarizing figures in the world of professional wrestling, a man whose name is synonymous with both revolution and controversy. In 1993, Heyman took control of what was once Eastern Championship Wrestling and transformed it into the hardcore, rebellious promotion that would forever change the landscape of the industry. ECW was a breeding ground for innovation, giving rise to legends like Tommy Dreamer, Raven, the Sandman, and many others. Under Heyman's leadership, the promotion became a sanctuary for the outcasts, the misfits, and the wrestling fans who wanted something raw and something real. But while Heyman may have been a visionary, his time running ECW was not without its fair share of scandals. Behind the scenes, ECW's finances were a disaster. Heyman's passion for the product was undeniable, but his ability to handle the business side was far less successful. From bouncing checks to lying to his talent about payments, many of the ECW roster members were left in the dark, literally and financially, as the promotion struggled to stay afloat. The company's eventual collapse in 2001 was a direct result of these financial mismanagement issues, despite all the passion and energy Heyman poured into his beloved promotion. By the time ECW went under, the unpaid wages, the broken promises, and the bouncing checks had left a bitter taste in the mouths of many who have worked for him. Today, we discuss the legacy of Paul Heyman. Welcome to episode 22 of the Stevie Richards Show. Welcome back to the home studio and welcome to episode number 22 of the Stevie Richards Show. For people that think I don't curse, today's episode, Paul effing Heyman. Well, I mean, that's kind of cursing a little bit. You can fill in the blanks and the apostrophe and all that stuff. And here to fill in with me as a more complete show is my co-host, James, or as I say now, Thurston Hell III, or a Bond villain. Get that pipe out, show everybody. Not the right pipe for pro wrestling, by the way. There's different pipes that are more appropriate, but that pipe will do for this show.
Oh, crikey. Well, I think you're sort of slipping in a dirty story there or something, it sounds like. I bought a pipe from eBay, and now it's just something to chew on. As I say, I've never smoked, although I think quite a lot of people think I do. I think maybe it's just... I keep seeing this occasionally. It's just because I hold my pen in a certain way, and I just chew things.
I was going to say, that's been a big complaint in the comments about chewing on the pen, and I was just waiting for the ink to burst all over your beautiful white shirt one day and you to be using the F-bombs. Not effing, the full word. As it's
not the effing.
Yeah.
There's, do you know what really, right, in WWE, right, when they put the photos up and they have blanked out effing from EC effing W on every single T-shirt. Yeah, and I'm sort of like, how offensive is that, surely? But I mean, they must have done this all during the PG era. But it's one of those things where I just thought that's such needless censorship. I understand, like, the WWF logos for legal reasons, but effing, come on.
But wait, the whole campaign after they had to switch to WWE because the panda destroyed them in court was get the F out. So you're not blurring that out, or you're not getting rid of that?
Oh, Lord, no, of course not. I mean, maybe that's what happened. They wanted to get the F out. They got the F out,
yeah,
and then the sort of apostrophe in the end went with it.
Okay, just checking. That's completely, thanks for the gaslighting. That's completely different. You're right. You're right, Vince. Sorry. That's right, pal.
Pal.
The
consumer. The consumer.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome all our dedicated consumers here at the Stevie Richards Show. I'm going to start calling them Patreon consumers as well.
And also, what was it? So it's non-NPC, because I said NCP once, and NCP is a chain of car parks here.
Yeah, NPC.
Which is a scam in a different kind of way.
Yeah, people love the gaming talk. I'm still considering switching the channel over to gaming. I got the whole setup. By the way, I want to say this before we get to one of the important things we like to do towards the beginning of the episodes. We have some corrections from episode 21 we want to get to. But before that, the behind the scenes video, although from a view count hasn't been super high, the interaction is great. I still get emails about that and kind of peek behind the curtain. What I'm working on right now, and I have Synology, which is a backup system of NAS's, network attached storage and stuff. I'm working with an audio company, but I also have spare audio systems. And also I'm working with Avermedia, who's sending me a game capture, possibly for the gaming channel. When we do the behind the scenes tours, which we're going to update like every month or two with different things, I'm going to do giveaways. I want us to do giveaways that are kind of like when we do an audio behind the scenes tour, how we handle the audio. There's going to be a giveaway attached to that. And I'm trying to work with the companies. And also you can help me. I've never done one like this. So as far as how to subscribe, comment, how we randomly pick a winner, shipping it out, all that stuff that we can facilitate. Because I want everybody to be able to have the tools to do what we do. You know, we're basically creating a business off of what we're passionate about. And I would love to facilitate equipment to people that way through giveaways.
Before we get onto the corrections.
Don't get too excited about that, James. Don't get too excited.
No, we won't. I'm sick.
I'm sorry.
I'm just that. Just everyone in the house is sick at the moment. So there you go. But it's Muggins here who still has to work, let me tell you. Anyway, intro that I've written down here in pen because I forgot to put it in the format. Stevie has got things. YouTube, fitness. Please go there, subscribe, watch the videos. And most importantly of all, the Patreon. We do a sort of pre and post show every single week, which ends up being an almost mini podcast in itself. And I think it gets like more spicy than what we usually broadcast to people who are not on the Patreon, I guess. What else is on the Patreon?
Well, this morning I just basically updated my setup configuration, some of the challenges trying to, I switched the desk around. So it looks a little bit different here, some of the lighting, and people like that peek behind the curtain as well when we get new things in there. And also the interaction, answering questions. People always comment or whatever. I try to answer them, and I'm going to add that like once every week or two, get on, record a video, answer those questions live from the previous format when we had the wrestling analysis channel, or as you call it, the wrestling anal channel. I don't know if all 98,000 people right now are there for the wrestling based on where it cuts off. That's our theory. But, Patreon's just everything behind the scenes of what we do. Also assets, when I create new assets, like we created the ticker, which is really popular. I'm going to start shooting like the cold opens before Friday's debut of the episodes. That's been pretty popular. So look at a behind the scenes look on how I prepare and film and edit the cold open each and every week. I'm going to make that part of Patreon as well.
So we'll have the link of the Patreon in the description, and we finally figured out a way to get the Patreon in the link at the end screen of every single video we do as well, apart from the full episodes, which we don't do end screens on for the time being. But before we get to we've got one bit of news, and then before we get to our full-throated shouting about Paul Heyman, our subject for this show, we have to make a correction, two corrections, in fact, one from me and one from you. Now, it was a day wrong and something about JBL, wasn't it, that you were beating yourself up over?
Oh, I was, absolutely. I was actually going to make a video for the actual thing. Like, I'm a big fan of what you're doing at WSI, where you react or you talk about things in the solo kind of talking head type of stuff. But in this vein, it really bothered me when I had said, for some reason, I was probably just thinking, my God, Raw's on Monday and I got to watch it. That's probably was in the back of my mind. But John was hurt with the chair shot on Tuesday night. We tape SmackDown on Tuesday nights. Now they're live on Fridays. I called him on Wednesday, the very next day. So when I said that, I was like, oh my God, it sounds like I waited 6 days to even call him right before. As we were at TV for Raw, I called him. Didn't make any sense to me, but I called him the next day. And I remember that it definitely was that week, at least, that we had more than one conversation, if not just the one, when Spike Dudley, I think all three Dudleys were released. I'm not sure. Spike definitely, because I remember talking to Spike and a few others. And when I talked to John, he shifted the conversation after that over to go, yeah, what about the guys getting released? We talked for about 5 minutes about that. And right after we got off the phone, I actually contacted Spike to check on him. So that's why I remember it was like a Wednesday or it was like a day or two after, and throughout the week conversations with John. So it bothered me because it looked like, well, you waited 6 days. What are you talking about? And then obviously you have one, and then we wanted to kind of maybe segue into the Paul Heyman based on episode 21 and some of the feedback from my perspective.
Yeah, there was just before I move on to my correction, the Dudley Boys, that was their last match for 11 years, whatever, in WWE. So I suspect they were released as well. And then they go to TNA and the Team 3D thing, etc., etc. I don't know if it's like a correction of mine or ours, or it's just something we didn't know, is that when we were focusing on the blood on Blue Meanie, apparently it didn't come from the punches from JBL. Apparently, even though he was on the ECW side with the Sandman, Sandman's cane somehow smashed Blue Meanie in the face, and that's where the blood came from. And you were saying for the Patreon people and such that you're not that surprised.
No one, friend or foe, no one is safe from the Sandman and the cane. Nobody is like he's the friend. Like it's like wrestling. You hit your friends even harder than the people you don't like. So that would have been an educated second guess. Like if it wasn't John, that Sandman would be the leading suspect in anybody bleeding, bruised up, or anything. And it's a crowd of people, so it was probably friendly fire. He was probably swinging, which, by the way, you got 20 people in the ring. It's like a battle royal. Don't bump in a battle royal when there's people around. And also, don't swing a cane, because back here you're going to hit somebody, here you're going to hit somebody, here you're going to hit somebody. I mean, if you want to hit 4 or 5 people at once, whether friend or foe, that's a good option, but not in this case. Why do you bring the cane to the ring for a battle royal? So funny.
With Maven as well. Not that we were talking about Maven, but I interviewed Maven on Monday. That'll be out fairly soon. And I brought up to him, I think I just texted him and said, oh, me and Stevie had mentioned, or Stevie and I, excuse me, if I'm going to be speaking properly, had mentioned you in the Blue Meanie Battle Royal story, and said basically you, Gene Snitsky, Regal, were sort of in the right area to basically protect Meanie from Bradshaw. So, they were pretending to beat him up and, basically just create a human barrier. And I said, Maven, what do you remember of that? And Maven went, I remember absolutely nothing from that. So I suspect Bradshaw was not the only person having a few drinks that night.
That would be my guess. But then again, I mean, it's so long ago. We do these episodes, and that's why we do the corrections, because there are things that are going to be remembered. And in my case, I compartmentalize a lot of stuff and I'm moved on. And this is an excellent exercise to kind of look back and do research and make sure that I'm right. But we get things wrong. That's why our show is different too. We never are afraid to admit when we do something wrong. We hopefully have the next episode to correct that. But I want you to kind of expound a little bit more, because I didn't see the comments, but I assumed that there was going to be feedback when I took the approach about my story with Paul Heyman and leaving ECW, and then kind of going forward, which, by the way, I think it was kind of my reaction to that, or a way I reacted to my thought or theory about being buried in new ECW. I had never thought about it like that before. That was my natural kind of reaction, and maybe an epiphany as we were doing the episode. So you were Dr. Stevie, you were Dr. James, I was on the couch, and you had your pipe smoking it and saying, well, tell me about ECW.
I wish this one blew bubbles. That would make me happier.
Did you ever do the ring thing, the ring pop? Did they have those in England where they had the candy on the ring?
I never had one, but yes.
That's your next thing, a pipe with bubbles, bubble gum pipe, and then you can actually eat the pipe and then get a new pipe. Be great.
Do you know what? I've got a feeling that I'm going to end up with one of those hats with the propeller on it.
You can actually dress full Inspector Gadget if you had that over in England.
Of course we did, for goodness sake.
Okay, I'm not, you're talking Knight Rider, Airwolf, and Gilligan's Island. I don't know, man.
Oh yeah. Sorry, we were also saying that I don't think Gilligan's Island was a thing in this country. I don't know if it was ever imported or shown or whatever, but whatever, it wasn't the cultural phenomenon that it was in America. So I gather. Because if you said Gilligan's Island, everyone here would be like,
Chris is moving his mouse right about now on Premiere Pro. We're going to start the clip about Paul Heyman. Let's do it.
Oh, well, that actually reminds me, we're not even going to be talking about Paul Heyman just yet, because we've got news first, which we do very occasionally, and we only do one bit. CM Punk. Now,
Can we correct it and go instead? Now we've updated it. It's not a future episode. It's a future part of this episode. How's that?
Yes. Well, don't take a drink for God's sake. Whatever you do,
We'll get to
especially at
that
this
this
time of day.
episode. We promise.
Especially at this time of day. God, I tell you what, I swear I've aged so much. I'm sort of doing this now. Anyway, here we go. CM Punk on how he feels like he wasted some of the select matches he has left on people in AEW who didn't deserve it. Now, here's the quote. I basically said it. I feel like I wasted some matches on some people for sure. That is what it is. Some people understand the business and some people don't. I think everybody here understands the business, here being WWE. Have you ever felt that way? Where I don't know if it's on the indies or whatever, where you just wrestled somebody and you sort of just thought, man, this guy just doesn't deserve the knowledge I'm imparting on them.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the indies, it can happen a lot. I see where Punk's getting, that kind of thought process and kind of looking back on that because, we have a term in wrestling, your bump card. You only have so many bumps in your bump card. You're not quite sure where you're at in the bump card, but later in your career, you know that you have less bumps ahead of you than behind you. And most guys hit the wall, much like I thought I did when I got the spine infection. I thought I just hit the wall, my back was out, fusion surgery, and I'm done. That's usually the way it goes. So for Punk, he knows he's on a pitch count, as we say a lot on this show. He was on a pitch count then. He's definitely on a pitch count now. His thought process, just trying to speak a little bit for him because I know him somewhat, he probably knows that the company, when they look at him, especially 2 injuries later, and now whatever sabbatical he's on now, away from TV, maybe a 3rd injury, right? Who knows? They're looking at how can we put the WWE or the World Heavyweight title on you? How can we count on you to make a run to WrestleMania for the championship or as champion? He's fully aware of that and probably looking now with 2020 hindsight saying, man, I think I gave a little bit too much to the matches in AEW, to the talent I was working. Might have bled a little bit too much, took too many bumps, matches were too long. Of course, he got paid multiple millions of dollars to do it, and along with, I think, a buyout on the way out or whatever it was. So he was financially fine from it, but from a creative standpoint and from, I guess in his way, to use a Cody phrase, finishing his story on top, WrestleMania, world title, that's what everybody shoots for, to go out completely on top. He knows now he might have wasted, in his mind, that time, the energy, the bumps, the physicality, the blood, sweat, tears, whatever you want to call it, in AEW. We all take that chance. Hey, look at it this way. This dude's made tens of millions of dollars minimum in the business. How many people on the indies never even get a shot on TV and are using up the same bump card, the same, like Kevin Nash famously says that Strongbow always told him, Chief Dave Strongbow, as an agent. The only two, Captain Lou Albano, I'm sorry, see, we did the correction right there. Captain Lou said there's only 2 things that are real in this business, the money and the miles. And I would add on the bumps, the physicality, and your body breaking down, which is the miles. That's what he meant by that. So Punk is now looking everything retroactively saying, should I have done all that? But here's the thing. He's where he is now. Storyline matters. Imagine if you had to keep wrestling, quote, dream matches with no storyline, blood, guts, long matches, maybe 1-hour draws because Tony wants to see him wrestle a 1-hour draw like he did with Joe. Imagine how bad his body would be hurting right now. Now he's involved in a storyline that requires a lot less physicality and, my opinion, is some of his best storyline work of his career with Drew McIntyre. What are your thoughts on that? What's your opinion on what he said?
I remember at the time when CM Punk was wrestling some of these people, and you sort of think, why? Because I'm not thinking in a bump card aspect. I'm just thinking in a story aspect of why are you spending 5 minutes wrestling or 8 minutes wrestling? I can actually get up the match listings, a Bobby Fish or a John Silver or something like that. You know, these aren't the kind of people that CM Punk should be spending a lot of time in the ring with in singles matches, unless they're, would you even in this day and age just book Punk to squash these guys and move on. Is that even? I know we don't have jobber matches. I know you hate the word jobber, enhancement matches essentially, or squash matches for the most part in 2024. But for someone like CM Punk, is that ever the right way to go?
Well, this was Punk's one big misfire, and I give him credit for the intention. Punk's intention was coming to try to serve the business, serve AEW, and serve the younger talent. He wanted to work the younger talent to elevate the younger talent. Unfortunately, there's no storyline. So Punk actually bought into the dream match scenario from Tony Khan. He wanted to work Darby Allin. He wanted to work all these people. And I think in his mind, wrestlers' egos can be great and push you through a lot of injury, but they can also be your worst enemy where, like I say many times, you think you have this overinflated sense or overinflated perspective that's not reality. The reality of where somebody is currently on the card, where you're on the card, and you feel like you can do a lot more than you can with that. Now, you're talking about enhancement matches. I actually think Punk coming back to AEW being a special attraction, never crossing paths when anybody. I'm a big fan of somebody debuting in the company and you saying for weeks or months, oh, I can't wait till he crosses paths with this person. Oh, he just mentioned this person. What's going to happen? But Punk is given low-level to mid-level enhancement matches, first and foremost, to get him back in ring conditioning, get him used to the ring, get him used to the style, get chemistry with the roster. Then, after 2-3 months of that, him cutting promos, him saying, I have a few people in mind. Stay tuned. You're going to know who they are real soon. Do you see how that build? Now we got a storyline just within the enhancement matches with him dropping hints or crossing paths and kind of bumping into somebody, a little bit of a stare down, and they both keep walking. They go from 100 to 0 in AEW, and they do it in WWE too. Hey, we're starting out at the top. He won the world title in the first match. 2 years later, hey, here's the vignette as if you've never seen them before. They just did that on the Lia Valkyrie and a couple other people on WWE. So I don't know about this inverted way of booking guys. Here's my point too, and I know I'm going off on a tangent about it. Why is it that when there was real competition between say WCW and WWE, why is it when WWF versus NWA or whatever you want to call it, there was competition and a sense of urgency, but everybody took their time with storylines and let them flesh out over a year, 2 years, whatever it might be. Now, essentially, WWE has no competition. AEW should not be trying to compete with WWE, but everybody is hot-shotting these angles like crazy. I don't understand why it's so inverted.
I was going to give you some examples here. Daniel Garcia, 14 minutes, 5 seconds. Bobby Fish, 13 minutes. Lee Moriarty, 10 minutes, nearly 10 and a half minutes. John Silver, just over 8 minutes. Now, I'm going to give you an example. The Rock versus Edge. And I know that might seem a really weird example, but I remember in 1999, Edge at the time was firmly in the mid-card. You know, he was Intercontinental Championship level. He'd win the belt briefly that year. But when he's in with The Rock, he was treated like it was a 3.5 minute match and The Rock beat him clean with the rock bottom and the people's elbow. I always remember that match specifically because I think it's a great example of, yeah, you can be in the mid-card, great. But the fact is that in my personal opinion, if you're going to be a main eventer, you need to be so much better than someone who is in the mid-card, and you need to show it. I don't know if that's your opinion, because back in the day, like in the Attitude Era, you had Steve Austin, then you had The Undertaker, The Rock, Kane, Mankind, that kind of thing. And then everybody below them. And it was just as simple as that. There's a clear demarcation point between your main eventers who you draw money with, and none of them would be doing dream matches at that time because why would you? It just makes no sense.
Well, that's Dutch could probably speak, and he has spoken probably in greater detail. By the way, we're happy to see Dutch back and doing the show and everything, and hopefully continue his recovery. Thank you to everybody that donated on the GoFundMe. It went well beyond anybody's wildest expectations. So it really is heartwarming to see that. Thank you to Tony Khan once again. We can't be remiss to not mention that. But with this is why, like what you said, there was the top five. Dutch probably has always talked about on a territory we have these top 5 talents. We got the guy, but we have these people in the mix of the main event or upper main event, always sniffing the world title or the main event of the shows. They could be plugged in. It keeps it there. You have your top 5, top 3, top 6, whatever. Never went beyond that. It was never like 10, 15, because nobody can have that sort of attention. And we were talking about a 1 hour, 30-minute show back then. With that being said, I'm going to once again talk about the Randy Savage rise to the world title. And Randy Savage had his enhancement matches. Then he had an angle that was just basically an angle before he won the Intercontinental title, I believe, from Tito Santana for the first time. He had the IC belt for a while, had the angle with George Steele, then had lost the Intercontinental title to Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, which George Steele had something to do with. Here we're all tied in. Now Savage, that testing ground for the IC title run, showed that he could carry the world title or at least go into the main event picture. The reason why I say Savage is because had Savage ever dipped down back to mid-card after that, had Savage ever be considered to be lower card, this is what happens to talent right here. Like the Motor City Machine Guns come into SmackDown. They win the tag titles week 2. I'm very happy personally because I love both of those guys, but where do you have to go after that? We don't even know who they are on WWE TV or a casual fan. The only place to go is down. Then they're going to try to reset them, and they're never going to recapture that. In other words, slow and steady wins the race. If they take care from the very beginning, you'll never not be upper mid-card the main event. You're always going to be a perennial. When Edge broke through and finally became world champion and cashed in the Money in the Bank, he never went back down into that. He always, whether it was a storyline, a title match, he's always, what we say in wrestling, he's always figured in. I don't know why the blueprint for that has changed so much to ADD. Even when Crash TV of the Attitude Era was a thing, 3, 4, 5, 7, like that Rock Edge match was probably a Crash TV Attitude Era match. It still meant more than 20, 30 minutes of nothing. We need to get these dream matches out, dream storylines, dream angles, make dream matches. End of story. Line.
I've got 2 more examples for you before I get onto the rest of the CM Punk thing. A while ago, they had the nephew of Dynamite Kid, Tommy Billington Jr. I can never remember which of FTR it was. It was one of them. In a singles match that went, I swear, like
Isn't that bad
minutes.
too? Like, you just don't know. You know Neidhart and Hart and the difference between the characters. That's a disservice to that tag team to be like, I don't even know which one it was.
Yeah, it was one of them. I know that. I can't remember. Anyway, they went 18 minutes on like a collision. It's like, why? There was no reason for it other than obviously FTR, whichever member it was doing Tommy Billington Jr. a favor, trying to show, what he can do, even though he was 100 pounds lighter and, has that thing of he couldn't break his way out of a wet paper bag kind of thing.
It's at a 1 hour show, by the way.
Collision's 2.
Okay. It's still bad. It's still bad, but on a 1 hour show, you go that long, it's pulling teeth.
Then there's more recently, Kyle Fletcher. He's just turned heel and joined Don Callis' family. And guess what? The next thing he did was he went 13 and a half minutes with Commander. Commander doesn't win anything. And this is meant to be your next fresh hot heel with the top heel group or, top heel manager Don Callis. And then he's going toe-to-toe with Commander, who, once again, has got such an incredible losing streak. Maybe not a streak. I think he won like some match.
Not like a Stevie Richards or JTG. Oh, good Lord, I can't say. I'm sorry, JTG streak.
It wasn't Brian Myers
or Stretcher Jack Hart.
Yes, or Stretcher Jack Hart thing, or Brian Horowitz. In fact, he would turn into later and have an incredible losing streak. But he's basically a jobber. He's booked like a jobber. But then you're doing a dream match, giving time to a match that there is no reason to give time to. And that is definitely more of a weakness with AEW than WWE at the moment.
Well, I am going to turn Commander's career right around here. This is free advice for Tony Khan. I'm going to make Commander a star with this one little tweak. Commander goes away for 4 weeks, comes back with a vignette. He's Cobra Commander. It has the mask and everything. Oh, yeah. There we go. Full voiceover. Yeah. Kane voice box, everything. Oh, man. Cobra Commander going to AEW.
Is that a G.I. Joe reference?
G.I. Joe, man. Weather Dominator. Yep.
Guess what?
What?
We never really got G.I. Joe here.
Ah! American propaganda, damn you.
for people who care, we got a version of G.I. Joe when they used to be the big figures, yeah? Not the little 3 3/4 inch
Oh, yeah.
ones.
Those are worth money, dude.
Yeah, and over in this country, they were repurposed and called Action Man. But we never had the G.I. Joes, really.
Doesn't have the, well, G.I. Joe is obviously, it's an American thing. So, well.
G.I. Joe and Sergeant Law. I never watched the film with Channing Tatum either. Is it Channing Tatum in The Rock?
Yeah, and Channing Tatum got killed in the sequel. The Rock's in the sequel, and Channing Tatum, who is Duke, got future endeavored in the second one.
You see, Gilligan's Island, G.I. Joe, just the cultural crossover isn't exactly 100% there, but I do know what you're talking about.
Good. G.I. Joe, I mean, not the best, but not Shazam either at the same time. Pretty good.
One more thing with CM Punk. This also leads to a conspiracy theory. Ricky Starks, Jamie Hayter, Danhausen, they've all publicly praised CM Punk at times, sometimes including after he left. And now, where are those people now? Danhausen hasn't been seen on TV for like this year, maybe, pretty much. Jamie Hayter, and I think she was injured for a while, but then, she was off TV, not wrestling for like 15 months. Ricky Starks is another guy who, wasn't he teaming with Big Bill? And then all of a sudden, he just disappeared and hasn't been seen since either. There's a FTR, friends with CM Punk. Where have they been comparatively speaking? Same with the House of Black. Is this conspiratorial mindedness thinking that anyone who is admitted to being a friend or a fan of CM Punk gets punished?
It sure seems that way, doesn't it? I would say the Ricky Starks thing may have more to do with the fact that he was hanging around Cody Rhodes at that Royal Rumble, I believe. He was shown there. That was like, it seemed like that was the beginning of the end right there. FTR, I didn't know Jamie Hayter was like that, a Punk supporter. The Danhausen thing's interesting because didn't that take to the internet and social media why he hasn't been on TV? And they supposedly said that he prioritized his indie bookings over AEW. There was some kind of scheduling thing, and then he said something.
You can't do that with AEW. I mean, AEW takes precedent, everyone knows that. So
that's what they're saying. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm saying, and there was something he said about. I only know this because we're on another show at Russo and everything, and it's just conversation. But supposedly he said something about he had family stuff to deal with and family scheduling. Which still in wrestling, you got to do your job, and I'm sure all these people are still getting paid, which is not as important as trying to build your brand at the time because that equals money. And we talked about it before. If you're not on TV, you get released, your money will consistently go down on the indies. And that's why guys like Zack Ryder and Brian Myers and everybody are still trying to get on TV somewhere to keep their value up. I would say that theory is not that out there, and that's the way it works. And Tony, for everything he's doing for Dutch and, other people and having a kind heart, he's very protective of his brand, his company, what his vision is. And if somebody goes against the narrative he wants, it's human nature. We told the Paul Heyman story last week, years and years and years later after doing bad business, it came back to, he didn't forget that. Nobody, I don't think if it's Tony Khan, whoever runs TNA, Vince McMahon, Triple H, Paul Heyman, anybody who's running anything, they're going to hold that grudge and try to get that receipt in the end, one way or the other. Or turn it into a reality-based storyline too and still get the receipt on TV.
Thing is, if you do it on TV like that, then at least you've got a chance of making money. And one more thing, bringing back to CM Punk. When he was initially suspended after the Brawl Out thing, and then Tony's response was to pretend it never happened, and then suspend Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks and take the trios titles off them with no on-screen explanation. That's one of those things where I just think that really crystallized the AEW mentality compared to the modern WWE way of doing things is turn chicken salad from, make chicken salad from chicken whoopsie in that sense. It's like, sometimes you just get handed a bad deal, but you know what? You can still make something of it if you're of a creative mind and sort of not enough ego to get in the way, I guess.
Well, the thing is, too, it really does insult the fans' intelligence. It's not 1980 or 1990. The internet, social media, and most of these people take the social media and give the fans the storyline there. But if you don't pay it off on TV with ratings or pay-per-views and stuff like that, it means nothing. And the thing with that was, it was very much a weird double standard that was right in front of the world, that brawl out press conference and him burying and him eating Mindy's Bakery, which the reviews after that were second to none. If they're still up there, check them out. My friend Phil recommended it. He works with a bunch of children. He's tired. He's old, but the cupcakes are awesome. The reviews are, the internet's undefeated with that. But then you turn around, and if you were consistently doing that, that's fine. But then you advertise on TV that you're going to show the Wembley backstage thing between Punk and Jack Perry, which turned out to look like real violence, which was absolutely nothing. No sound, no nothing, no anything. And they thought they had something with that. So they think in a way they're learning the lesson from the brawl out, the saga, but I think it made it worse when you're like, okay, well, you showed that. It's kind of like also with AEW, it's funny, the video, I took all the videos down from the Wrestling Analysis channel. The one video that didn't get content ID'd or copyright striked or blocked from AEW, where I was critical of the Punk Joe match from Wembley. Isn't that weird? The only one that didn't get flagged.
Funny that, isn't it? As I say, not that we're conspiratorially minded here. You mentioned Paul Heyman a couple of minutes ago. We were talking about him before we started talking about CM Punk, and this show is going to be mostly dedicated to Paul Heyman's stories. But the first thing we've got to mention about Paul Heyman is the video that you did last week. Now, you were talking about the need to apologize to Paul Heyman and the boys on the Rise and Fall of the ECW DVD. This was an extra on the DVD. It's a very memorable extra because I remembered it from 20 years prior. And it's one of those things you were talking about it, and once again, you've been maybe overly harsh on yourself, and I'm your Lance Russell in the, oh, come on, that kind of thing. Don't be too hard on yourself. And I agreed with you. And a lot of people in the comments agreed with you as well, as far as, and let's tee this up for people who haven't watched it yet, is you left ECW. In fact, no point me saying it, just very briefly why you felt the need to apologize, and then we'll get to the comments.
Well, it was more for the boys. And like I said, that's really what counts. Paul is a different element altogether as the boss and doing proper business. But the boys who made Stevie Richards what he was in ECW, Big Stevie Cole, the BWO, the whole act, you cannot get there on your own. It's like football, but times 100. You can't get there on your own. You can't throw a pass if someone's not there to catch it. You can't be a wide receiver if the quarterback doesn't throw you the ball. In wrestling, it's cooperative, even more cooperative, the most cooperative sports or entertainment entity that you could ever be involved with. I cannot be Big Stevie Cole fighting for the World Heavyweight title in the three-way dance, which, by the way, could have put Dreamer in there, could put anybody in there. Paul put me in there with Sandman and Terry Funk. Everybody had a part to play to get me to that level. The Little Guidos, the Axel Rottens, even the, Kid Cash I wrestled, Ricky Morton, Balls Mahoney, everybody. New Jack putting the shirt on, the Steve Williams thing with the tearing the shirt off, getting kicked. All this stuff led up to people's perception that I was a main event talent. So I leave ECW, not doing proper business on the way out, putting other people over, left suddenly for WCW. And then, like I said, a rash of bad decisions, which I think everybody can identify. When you try to over fix something, you make it worse, instead of kind of just trying to figure out where you're at. So I think what people criticized was, and might have been misconstrued, that I apologized for what it was, and I was still sorry for the way I did business with Paul. That does not, how should I say, That does not make him innocent of the charges that everybody knows that are attached to Paul Heyman that we're going to talk about in this episode. The lying, the bounced checks, saying I'm going out to film Rollerball, and he shows up on Raw, and the ECW talent sees it on Raw. We're going to talk in detail about that, how much it hurt Dreamer to a point of almost committing a heinous crime live at WrestleMania 17. So that's exclusive to that. But like I said, this business, these shows and podcasts on YouTube or whatever, wrestlers are always deferring blame to other people. Wrestlers are always saying, yeah, but this guy, yeah, but that guy, yeah, but the promoter. I should have been world champion. They kept me down. They buried me. I was the great. You got to have that level of confidence internally, though. You didn't think I got in the business to be world champion. I got in the business to be a multimillionaire and make multi-generational wealth for my family for generations to come. I had the same aspirations. Now I'm not in the business as a wrestler anymore. Now I need to run my own businesses in the real world, the fitness business, this brand with you, whatever other aspirations I have as Michael Manna, not Stevie Richards. Looking at it that way, I have to be hyper accountable in my own way. Like I said, I don't do anything halfway. I'm either going to make a ton of excuses 100% of the time, or I'm going to blame myself 100% of the time. The thing people misunderstood and misconstrued is I do not carry this around every day. When we finish this show, I go out there and play ESPN, actually EA and NCAA college football with my friends. I'm creating stuff here in the studio. I'm editing fitness videos. I'm having or living the best life that I can live. I'm enjoying being a married man, all these different things I enjoy. I do not sit there and wait for, oh my God, I hope Paul saw the clip and I hope Paul calls me and I hope maybe I'll get the fast ringtone like Roman Reigns did on SmackDown. I have no desire, honestly, to be around of any of these people. We've talked about conventions and signings that I've turned down in other appearances. I have no desire. If I bump into them and have a conversation, much like JBL, totally fine. I don't seek them out anymore. There was a point where I was in the business, you're seeking out the approval of these people that are never going to approve of you. Now in my life, it's attract or reject. As easy as that. I choose to be around the people I want to be around, and I choose not to be around the people I do not want to be around. And by the way, Paul Heyman is one of the people I choose never to be around. And it's a longer list than the people I want to be around that are in the business, because those people I'm already around. I just talked to Big Sal from ECW for 40 minutes yesterday about everything but wrestling. And it was beautiful. Funko Pops, video games, what are you doing? Catching up like friends do. So with that being said, and I don't know how I can close the point, I'm not wallowing in the mud, as you would probably say over there. I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I'm so happier. I'm much happier now than I've ever been in wrestling. And it's amazing. A business that I obsessed with. If there could be more hours and days in the week, I would have obsessed more about wrestling at one point. Now, outside of this and researching and getting the facts straight and trying to put on the best show that we can put on, I do not think about it for 1 nanosecond. And that's not to denigrate people that do obsess over it, because if you're in the business, you should obsess over it. You should watch every bit of tape, study everything. If I say something negative, go out there and prove me wrong. Have a chip on your shoulder like I did. I'll show you, you'll see. MF me, go out there, have the best match, tell the best story, make the most amount of money, and say, Stevie Richards, you're a fool. I'm main eventing WrestleMania. I don't harbor any ill will for anybody, but I also don't seek anybody's approval of anything either. If I did, we would never talk about what we talked about for the past 21, 22 episodes. And even you see it, and let's be honest and peel back the curtain. There are times I say, I don't really feel comfortable talking about this. But I realized sometimes when it feels uncomfortable and it feels weird, much like in the wrestling business, you've got to lean into it. And it's good for business. And these are things people want to watch and listen to. And hopefully we put it out in a very nuanced and detailed fashion.
With that being said, just to explain once again, I'm going to read the comments. Stevie received a broken neck from errant Terry Funk, dropping a guardrail on the back of his neck. And instead of sticking around with ECW, where they weren't paying him very much, but, they were using him very well, near the top of the card, he ended up signing with WCW instead for far more money, and then it would allow him to, one, probably wrestle less because he could almost be a manager of Ravens, who'd also just jumped to WCW, and two, get paid more, and therefore he could afford the neck surgery. Now, that being said, that is sort of my way of looking at it. I know it's different to your way of looking at it last week, and a lot of people wrote in hundreds upon hundreds of comments. I read and copied some of the top ones that got the most likes, and I want to put a few of them to you, and then I'll let you react, and then I'll give a few more to you. Terry Eubanks says, if Paul Heyman still holds a grudge against an injured and scared 20-something-year-old Stevie Richards for finding better employment, he needs to grow the hell up. Station Al, if a promoter can't meet his bare minimum responsibility of paying his talent, then they deserve absolutely nothing in return for those talents. Rad Alexander, I get Stevie's commitment to the other wrestlers, but F. Heyman. The fact that people just forget how much he lied and scammed wrestlers out of paying them while having them do crazy, extreme stuff they did to their bodies is wild. Mike Awesome left because he wasn't getting paid and he was the champ. RVD stopped showing up for a while because he wasn't getting paid. Cornette has told stories of Paulie being a liar. Hell, Heyman himself was laughing about how much of a liar he was when he did Jericho's podcast a long time ago. Paul Heyman is one of the greatest wrestling minds and promos ever, but as a businessman, he's scum. And one more. Rare Wrestling Video said, after your neck injury, Steve, you obviously needed the money to pay for the surgery. WCW could help you with that, and ECW couldn't or wouldn't. I think a lot of people would have done the same thing if they were in your shoes. So basically, everyone isn't on Heyman's side. They're on your side and basically saying they would make the same decision you did.
Very true, but I was in the wrestling bubble. And ECW was kind of like a cult. So Paul never made anybody do anything, by the way. He had such a motivational type of thing. He was very charismatic. He was a cult leader, essentially. He could get you to volunteer to do it without him putting you in that position. No excuse. So when people are saying, too, that, certain things, and I've gotten messages and emails from people that both sides of it, hey, you shouldn't be so harsh on yourself. But at the same time, you're kind of simping for Paul. Which I don't understand. That's the part of, I'm waiting for the call as I'm telling the truth and putting it all on me, which is fine. I love the fact that people comment either way. I do. Everybody having an opinion about it or a perspective is great. Now I look back at 2020 hindsight, years and decades later, that's the businessman I am today. I told you before, I had a couple rough conversations with an fitness affiliate this week regarding money. And I used the lesson from ECW where I let people, or maybe even further in my career, talking about WWE, the contracts kept going back to 75 grand, TNA, the opportunity, which never came, or ROH, all these different things that I set myself up for with total enthusiasm to trust that they would do the right thing. And they didn't, as most wrestling promoters won't, by the way. But now, as a businessman outside of wrestling, I'm taking the lessons where I made that mistake, and in instances like that, where I held my ground, respectively held my ground, and presented it as I am a valuable asset and brand, and I'm a valuable partner in this. That was the lesson on that. So I carried that, not, oh God, I wish wrestling would call and this time they'll take care of me. Trust me, I have lots of friends that are still in the business, once a week calling me for 30 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour with the same vicious cycle. TNA, WWE, they screw me over. They don't pay me off this and that and that. I'm like, well, why don't you leave and go somewhere more valuable? Well, I'll just wait it out. Maybe stuff will change. You've been there 3 years. Nothing's changing. Do you see what I'm saying? My lessons learned from that, the penance that I said I paid in wrestling, that's done. It's fine. I'm completely happy right now. Of course, I'm a little insane because every day I wake up, it's up to me, just like you and any other independent contractor or businessman. But at the same time, I do not want to go back to that. I do not desire anything. I don't desire even a little Royal Rumble appearance for 6 to 10 seconds. I do not want to be around these people because I choose not to be around them. And it's the best feeling in the world. Any wrestlers that are listening to me or watching me right now, I'm telling you, There's hope and there's definitely happiness on the other side.
I'm going to give you one more comment that was sort of backs up exactly what you were just saying there. DW Tech Fan says Stevie Ray from Harlem Heat once said the pro wrestling business warps the human mind like nothing else I've ever seen. Richards is sorry he left ECW the wrong way when Mike Awesome or Paul Heyman did, and Heyman is the one who's still mad at Richards. Your place on the card dictates whether you have value, and if you're a main event guy, you're just labeled as challenging, and you call your own shots and do whatever you want to do. If a lower card guy does the same thing, he's not doing business and he's hated. It's the same thing, but because of the perceived values, it's treated differently. Pro wrestling truly is a gigantic mind F.
I can't follow up with that. That is, you just encapsulated the entire business. Thank you very much. That was, all the comments were great. We love all the comments from anybody, whether it's positive or negative towards this. We take the feedback. You see each and every episode on a production level. We take the feedback to heart and try to improve it. But that comment, out of all those great comments, that is probably the comment of the year.
I want to ask this to you. So I know obviously you're looking at the reality of the situation and you decided to choose WCW over ECW, but think about this.
And over WWE, because I had spoken to Bruce Pritchard. And over WWE.
Say that again, sorry.
Yeah, they were talking about putting me in DX.
Well, that's further in 99, though.
No.
I'm talking about...
No, this is when I was leaving ECW. I met with Bruce. I met with Vince. Yeah. That was
future episode. I'm writing it down. I promise you.
No, I swear that happened. People say, "Oh, there's no way he'd be." Remember the interview, the WSI interview, where they say I was considered for DX?
I got the impression it was 99.
No,
when you went with, or when you started.
No, I signed with WWE in 99. This is 97. When I had the choice of that, I went to WCW, and Bruce was not happy about that. Because I had met with him, met with Vince. It just didn't feel right.
People hate when I say this, but I promise you, future episode. I promise you.
We're going to have an episode named the future episode where we're going to cover the entire gambit of everything.
I've already written it down then. If you had gone back to ECW, let's say you say, okay, well, fine, I'll just continue making $200 per shot or whatever it was you were making at the time. And then you won't be able to afford your net getting fixed because I doubt that Paul Heyman would have paid for it. You never know, maybe, but probably not. And then what could have happened? He talks you into something that maybe you're not comfortable with, or you take a weird bump, or you take some sort of weapon shot to the head. It compresses your neck. It damages it further. If you hadn't have gone to WCW, where it wasn't at least as hardcore and crazy, that could have saved your career getting out of ECW that time. Do you ever think of it sort of the inverse way, like I've suggested there?
Well, everything happens for a reason. So there were positives attached to that. There was a path. I think the bigger benefit, like I said before, was all those bad decisions in the moment, the bad decisions that kept fostering a lot of resentment and mistakes and a lower return on each decision, built work ethic. It toughened me up. It toughened me up for life. It set me up for where I'm at now, to never give up, to not blame other people, to not make excuses. It took a while. It took a long time. And I didn't necessarily get it right away either, because once again, I went up to 262 pounds with the biggest opportunity that I've ever had or would have had afterwards in my career with the right to censor, and gained 60 to 70 pounds. And my work was the worst it's ever been. So you go through this roller coaster ride in your life. Now I'm trying to even it out and keep it a little more higher than lower. But like I said, off camera at Patreon, I go, there's instances I'm ready, fire, aim. I fly, you know what I mean? I don't think everything through. So there's times where my wife is like, hey, you're being a little too Philly. Stop it. That's what she calls me because I'm from Philadelphia. So I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But that's another way of looking at it, and that's a great way of looking at it, because maybe we wouldn't be sitting here because I wouldn't have had the career. I never would have went to WWE. I would never had the physical. I would have never had the physical durability to survive WWE with those hard rings, or even WCW with the monsters they had there. So maybe it was just all lined up the way it was supposed to happen in the whole body of my career. So that's an excellent point. And he would not have paid for the surgery because I remind everybody about the episode where I talked about where I had my face broken in Reading, Pennsylvania, my fault for not ducking off of Rob's kicks. And it broke my nose, orbital bone. And he told me to go to New York City to this doctor. And Dreamer's like, he's lying to you, wacko. He didn't call me wacko back then, but he's lying to you. So I went there and it was a pizza place and I had a slice of pizza. So he wouldn't have paid for it. There's no way.
Did you feel better after the pizza at least?
Well, here's the thing. If you have a broken nose, even an orbital bone, but the broken nose, and you chew, you forget that you can't breathe through your nose. It's incredibly like off-putting. But then as your orbital bone is as you're chewing, your orbital bone is shifting from north to south. Yeah. I mean, it's great pizza. Philly's still better than New York pizza.
Brother,
Comment below.
Broken their nose.
That'll get comments.
I was going to say, if somebody's broken their nose more than once, I fully appreciate what you're saying.
Did you ever have the gauze? I had the gauze stuffed up my nose when I had it fixed the one time after Chris Masters, and I couldn't breathe at all for 4 days.
No, never had the gauze. I had the first surgery I had there was, I don't know if it was like calcified bone or they called it bone or whatever it was. They had to actually, from my septum at the top, they had to actually extract like a piece of like bone or whatever it was, or some calcified whatever from the middle, which is why I couldn't breathe.
Oh my God. So you had like a deviated septum, but it was still in the center, just extended over.
Yeah, it's like at the top had swelled up and something had grown in between, which basically says I broke it as a kid and then while I was still growing. Do you know what I mean?
It fused wider than it should have.
Yeah. So, in the septum at the top. So that was awful. Anyway, oh, for God's sake, I'm going to have to go for surgery again at some point, but who's got the time, Stevie? Who's got the time to have surgeries?
Oh, I don't know.
Surgeries I've had.
I'll probably have one after this episode, just for all time, just for all time's sake.
One on the back, why not?
Hey, it'd be good for the fitness channel. I didn't survive this. I'll let James handle the thumbnail and the title.
Chalk outline.
Here. Thumbnail.
Screen grab. Control screen grab. So, with Paul Heyman, this leads us to something that we were actually going to talk about today. We were going to be talking about the invasion. And then there was so much to talk about with Paul Heyman and the pre-invasion that this show ended up just being about Paul Heyman for the most part. And this leads us to Paul jumping to the WWF. Now, I believe the last show, ECW, was in early January. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, he was telling people, oh, just hang on, ECW's on a bit of a hiatus, that kind of thing. And then one day he just all of a sudden, and this also ties up with a previous show that we've done, Jerry Lawler and the Cat disappear. Jerry Lawler is, of course, the lead announcer for Raw and SmackDown at the time. And then there's a slot to be filled, and then all of a sudden the next week, Paul Heyman's involved. Was that the first, as far as you're aware, of anybody with an ECW realizing that that's when ECW was done, that Paul Heyman was now with the WWF?
Yeah, when he showed up as the commentary partner for JR, I believe, that was the first indication to the talent, to the roster. And this comes from Dreamer, Big Sal, Guido, Danny Doring, a lot of people that I'm still friendly with now that had told me the story that he had said he was going out to California to film Rollerball, which he did. He was in Rollerball. If you haven't seen it, don't bother. But
just gonna say cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah, it's a master. I mean, to close ECW down for Rollerball, that really wasn't a good enough reason. So, yeah, he was supposed to go out there, and he just showed up on Raw with JR, and that, according to the guys, that was it. That was exactly, their indication. I don't know if there was a phone call, group call, meeting. I don't know what it was, but it was very interesting because you had people coming into ECW after that, or WWE from ECW after that, and I wasn't privy to the encounters, the conversations. I'm assuming with them there and Paul there, they were going to be very political and not tell him or anybody else how they really felt about what he did. But guys weren't happy. And of course, Paul Heyman was famous, Big Sal. And, that's the other thing. I try to mention names and stuff of people that obviously say you can say it was me. There's a famous joke as early as yesterday, as we're recording this, that I always joke with Sal because he had told Big Sal, probably a lot of other people, he goes, if I have to drive a cab to pay you and keep ECW in business, I will, on my father's eyes. And that's anytime we say, when someone goes, come on, man, you're BSing me, I'll be like, on my father's eyes. Because he's a meme now, I guess, to most of these guys, you know, just a catchphrase or whatever. But he was so doubling, tripling, quadrupling down, guaranteeing these guys, kind of like a promoter guarantees you a job for life. Never run away. Johnny A, you have a job for life, Stevie. Oh, God, I'm getting fired today. So you never could trust him with that, but he would always double and triple down on that stuff of guaranteeing you these things. And that was the one last thing. Now, I'm not aware of any of the financial aspects, how much trouble the company was in. I was already in WWE at this time. So I don't know if they were already on the course for bankruptcy court and all these other things, which eventually happened. And Paul just went there. I'm sure he masked it or presented it when he was, if he ever was confronted by anybody, and even in a friendly way, like, what, dude, what happened? That he was like, I came here to make sure all of you had a job in WWF, which he did get guys. I'm sure he politicked for some guys, but it just as many guys probably that maybe spoke out or were more open about their disdain for what he was doing or not doing. Those guys probably never showed up or ended up getting buried when they came in.
Was there any indication when Paul Heyman came in advance that you knew he was going to be there, or did he just show up one day and surprise a lot of people?
If I can correctly recall, I know there wasn't any kind of meeting like, hey, Paul's coming in to replace Jerry Lawler and Jerry's gone. There's never been those kind of conversations. It's just like, here he is, and that's it. I think I just saw him walking down the hallway to the production meeting. I was like, oh, that's strange. But I kind of knew because they were on life support for a very long time. They were floated. I mean, Chris Candido, Shane Douglas, I'm sure Shane's talked about everybody running their credit cards up, paying for flights, paying for shows, back pay on the guys, bounce checks, all this stuff was going on. So the indication that this thing was not going to last. That's why everybody talks about TNA. TNA has been on life support for 20 years. They just seem to always stay alive with it, but they always seem to be one heartbeat away from going out of business. That's the way the guys felt in ECW towards the end.
We might as well stick with money then. How many people does Paul Heyman owe money to? Or maybe it might be easy to name the people he doesn't owe money to.
He doesn't owe money to me, because if he owed money at my salary, there was hours left in the company, not days, weeks, months, or years. I don't know. The people that have verbalized or vocalized the money owed to them, like Shane has, Dreamer has, I don't know about Taz, Bubba, or anybody else on the card. I know Rob had, like you said, gone away for a while because he wasn't getting paid, came back. That was going on. But Rob's a different animal, like that comment said, which was an awesome comment. He valued Rob way more than a lot of other talent. So obviously it was a pecking order of who was going to get paid. And even Rob was screwed out of money. So that's the whole thing too. I think in retrospect, guys kept their mouths shut. They kept their mouths shut a lot too with Paul, because I can make the money back if he gets me a deal in WWE. And that's kind of the way it resurfaced with a lot of guys coming there.
I've got some names that have verbalized that they owe him money. It's not comprehensive, but I think all these have said that. Shane Douglas, Sabu, Tommy Dreamer, Rob Van Dam, Chris Candido, Tammy Sitch, Joey Styles, Rhino, New Jack, Francine, C.W. Anderson, Little Guido, a ton of the undercard guys, Mike Awesome. One thing about the undercard guys is that a lot of them would just, what was it, $75 if they got that, and then a lot of them would just work for free just because they wanted to be on the shows, they were young, wanted to get experience. Or, Paul Heyman had convinced them, you're young, you need to get experience, look at this as an audition for greater things, which happened for some of them. But there's even...
That's how I started. I just showed up with my bags and got chokeslammed from 911 for what felt like forever. That was the way it used to be back then, and the ECW is probably the last place that did that sort of thing of show up with your bags, drive. People were driving hundreds, if not thousands of miles to shows. to do that. And then, 6 to 8 or 10 in a room trying to save money. So I really do, put over those guys and girls to do that because you really do want it. But then it becomes just on an overarching theme. What you have to figure out the tightrope of when do I stop and treat it like it's a business? Because then if you're always going to work for free, nobody's ever going to pay you.
I'm going to harp on a couple of things about bankruptcy and payment, and then we're going to get to a contract story that I'm excited to hear about. I find it incredibly weird that ECW, when I say that they had almost no talent on the roster making six figures. Maybe there was Rob Van Dam, a couple of others, but for the most part, people were arguably underpaid or not paid at all. They were packing out buildings, mid-size, so they were still selling out like what 3,000-4,000 seat buildings, even towards the end. They were selling pay-per-views. They had 2 games out. I'm not going to get into the whole Acclaim withholding money kind of thing, hoping they'd go into bankruptcy and then etc. And then there were figures that Paul Heyman was getting all the money for because no one got any royalties because, of course, Heyman signed all the contracts. T-shirts, which I'm sure was the same thing as well. Basically, the company had such low overheads. How did ECW, in your opinion, get so many $1 million in debt? Because for all intents and purposes, to the naked eye, they were a successful mid-sized company.
I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. I was around Paul when I was with the company, and ECW was doing great merch sales, great houses, maybe not to the point of some of the 3,000 to 5,000 seat ones. We would go to the Beaver Dome in Pittsburgh and other places that were much bigger, but not too often. We were still in the ECW arenas, the Greyhound track in Revere. That's a few hundred people, maybe 1,000 people in some, but the merch sales, the DVD sales, this was still a tape trader type of business, VHS tapes and stuff. It was a worldwide type of thing. And Dreamer was running the merch. I remember I had, Lloyd Van Buren in the ticket office. We were working nonstop. There was tons of things going on that should have generated a lot of money. Not to mention, we did have sponsors from time to time and other things. I don't know about that. There's a missing element to this that I can't speak on. The money went somewhere, and it didn't go to the boys, and it seemingly didn't really get totally reinvested back into the company because from what I saw, we still had the same production team of Ron and Charlie and doing the business out of their parents' basement and editing, and I couldn't tell you. That's something like I even wonder to this day, and people can speculate about did something personal happen to the money on Paul's part or what happened here, but I don't know. You look at it and like the money, the gate, the merch, the VHS sales, other things that the company was making money on, to not be able to grow, much less be on a path to bankruptcy and not paying the talent. And that's Ron and Charlie production. I think he was behind on paying them as well. I don't even think Paul was getting paid. It's weird. You never saw the money. Like, it wasn't like he showed up in what was back then like a Tesla Model X or something, $100,000 car. He wore the same stuff basically all the time. Unless that was a facade, he looked like he was struggling just as much, if not more, than the people in the company. And like I said, that could be like, hey, look at me, I'm living it too kind of thing. Or he really was as broke as everybody who worked there.
There was also the bit that you alluded to beforehand. At the end, he said he was going to Hollywood to try and secure an ECW TV rights deal, and all he does is end up in Rollerball.
Oh, I missed that part. That was the official, like, on the surface reason that he told the talent. I'm sorry. He said, I'm going out there for ECW, for the boys. I'm going to get a deal. And yeah, he was filming that movie, if that's what you can call it.
He was.
The movie, if that's what you can call it. I don't know.
Lord. Who was the guy? He was Ostriker. He was Oz in American Pie. And I think Rollerball killed his career.
Sean Astin? Sean Scott.
It's not Sean William Scott. It's the guy who was.
Sean Astin was for Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry.
I'm just looking it up because it's bugging me now.
Also, Sean Astin was in the movie The Shift with Neil McDonough, which was one of my favorite bad guys of all time. That was a great movie.
I think you may have been thinking of Sean William Scott, but it was Chris Klein. That was just bugging me. He went into Rollerball and think, here's the next Hollywood star. and the rollerball happened and it killed him off.
Maybe can we blame Paul for that too? I mean, that's
Possibly, yeah. Maybe something in a bankruptcy hearing that, someone got Chris Klein's career. We shall. Should we talk about the contract story, or should we save that till after the Tommy Dreamer story?
I think after the Tommy Dreamer story, or we can keep it. The contract story is an interesting story because he could counter with it was a letter of intent, but to me the meat of the contract. Let's talk about it right now. So I'll let you set the table for this because you're curious.
No, that's all I know. You just said once he handed you a contract that you weren't that keen to sign while in ECW. We can talk about more of the shystery ways of Paul Heyman afterwards if you wish, but this contract, explain it.
So this is during the BWO. This is the biggest opportunity of my career up to this point, outside of the right to censor years later. And Paulie wants to secure me on a more long-term basis. Right now, I'm on a nightly deal. Everybody's pretty much on nightly deals or whatever it is. I believe it was Downingtown, Pennsylvania. I worked my match. It was outside. All the cars and trucks were parked along. It was like the back of a flea market type thing. So you have those doors in the back. Usually the people park in the back that are running the stores. In this case, the wrestlers were parked in the back, and the front is for the fans. So he's talking to me. We're talking about things. And Paul and I had a very personable relationship. Like I said, he could disarm me, and he can also motivate and inspire me to get out of my shell, think outside the box, do great promos, make me feel comfortable with that. So as a producer, he was excellent doing that stuff. When he brought me back there and he was talking to me, putting me over, the promoter thing, like any Indian promoter, oh, brother, you're this, you're that, everything. Then you talk about the money. So he hands me a paper. And here's where it could be a letter of intent. It could be an official contract. That's semantics. The meat of the contract was literally just a one-page thing, had our names on it, at least that was on it. And it said, Michael Mann or whatever agrees to blank number of years for blank amount of money. So there could be wording in between, but where it said years and money was blank. And he handed it to me, and he was just like, kind of like Vince McMahon with the Belt Squad. Here you go, look at this. So I was like looking at it, he goes, what do you think? And I said, well, there's nothing here. He goes, well, Paul's eyes get bulgy, and he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, there's nothing here. Yes, there is. Read it. I was like, okay, read blah, 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 blah. For blank amount of years, for blank amount of money. And he goes, what's the problem? I was like, Paulie, there's nothing here. Like, there's nothing filled in for how many years, how much money. He goes, oh, don't worry, we'll fill that in later. Just sign it. And he may have said, this is just a letter of intent. And I said, there's still nothing here. And that there, I could be off base. There could have been other elements, other happenings. That was the beginning of the end of my time in ECW, because he seemed very hurt by it. He seemed offended. Why? I'm just pointing this out. If he had said 3 years for 50 grand a year or whatever, you know what I mean? If he had just put a starting point of anything there, because I wanted to stay in ECW, and I believe his motivation, rightfully so, Raven was already leaving for WCW. So his first priority in his mind is, I got to keep him, because this guy is going to want him to go and do exactly what I did. Reprise my role as the lackey and get Raven hopefully more over in WCW and protect his gimmick to not do jobs, which was my job in ECW up until the BWO. So after that point, it was real weird between Paul and myself. Lots of short answers. The same thing, I would ask him questions or feedback. One word. I mean, everybody's been there with people. If he were your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend, work, boss, coworker, and they start speaking in very short, one-word, close-ended answers, everybody feels the heat, right? Everybody feels the awkwardness. So with that, I mean, I think I even came up to him one time and said, man, can we work this out or do whatever? He goes, everything's fine. Don't worry. You just go out there and work. Like, very like hands off, when he was very hands on with every part of my gimmick, match, promo, everything up until that point. I was on an island after that, which is weird because I felt terrible at the time. I'm in the wrestling bubble, so wasn't beating myself up, but I was like, what did I say that was wrong? I didn't say this is BS. Fill this in. This got to be at least $100,000. This got to be, I'm not signing for more than you know what I mean? I didn't give him close-ended feedback on whatever this paper was. I said, there's nothing here. And this was like 1997, before gaslighting was a term. He was gaslighting me to say there's numbers there, or don't worry, we'll fill that in later. As naive and trusting as I was, even I was like, oh. And that forced me to go talk to Scotty Raven and say, this is what I got. And he goes, dude, I'll talk to Eric and we'll see what we get. That was the beginning of that and the beginning of that, all happening at once.
As someone just listening to that story for the first time, it's like, how dare Paul Heyman even summon up as we would say, the nous, to pretend to be offended to get you to sign a blank piece of paper of where he could just put anything in afterwards. Was it just all an act, do you think, to sort of guilt you into signing this?
It was probably two different things at once. It was an act of being offended. It was an act of acting somewhat hurt and, doing like, I mean, he might have even said it. He said it to me before, whenever I questioned or anybody questioned him, the big bug eyes. Are you calling me a liar? That was Paul's go-to, like, really ultimatum line. I don't know if he said that then, but he definitely had the bug eyes. He definitely lowered it to, remember Paul used to put his face in the camera during those promos about, come get me. That was the face. That was the face. You're going to see it on the cold open because I'll have the screen grab up there on the cold open of this episode. It was an act, but it was also that Paul probably got frustrated and angry that maybe I wasn't as naive I wasn't as naive at that moment that I thought I was. So it must have shocked him in a way that I've never questioned one thing Paul ever said, did, directed. I questioned Raven on Dave's Duke's half, but I learned my lesson to not question these geniuses with the creative process, the matches, the promos, the angles, the storyline. This was essentially the first time I ever said, whoa, and started pushing back a little bit. And I would dare say I'm not pushing back. I'm literally just, there's nothing here. It's blank.
Madness, pure madness.
And and like the comment said, he's probably still more mad at me today for whatever reason. But that was the linchpin for the entire series of events. That one meeting behind, I believe, Downingtown Farmers Market during that show with ECW.
How much would you have signed for? Let's say the neck was already broken, you're already injured, you knew you had some medical bills to take care of. How much would you have signed for realistically?
I probably would have went to Raven, who had more dealings with contracts. I probably would have asked Dreamer because Dreamer was generally honest and didn't pick sides. He was very protective of Paul, but he was also protective of people from Paul. It was a very weird dynamic, very weird, symbiotic and anti, you know what I mean, at the same exact time. So I would have deferred to that. I probably would have made a mistake of going to too many people. I also would have this would have been the first time I would have went to a lawyer. Now, there was nothing in here about owning the name, owning Stevie Richards, Big Stevie Cool, this was a very general kind of one-page thing, which leads me to believe it was a letter of intent that could have been a contract if I had signed it fully with the blank stuff. As far as money and time, I would probably say maybe the way I didn't know about all the difficulties or all the money troubles. This is still in the very, I guess, high point of ECW was still growing. There was still potential for ECW to be more. Probably, I mean, if he gave me a 3-year, kind of like $50,000 a year or something at the time, was probably going to be a lot of money. But if it was like $40,000 a year, but I could work indies and do signings and we could flesh that out for extra money. Royalties weren't even a thing in 97, by the way. They weren't. This was off the heels or probably at the beginning of the Jesse Ventura lawsuit. Like, was the royalty payments to wrestlers may have not even been birthed. You know what I mean? Because there was no royalties outside of Hogan for the longest time. He's going to get mad again, Hogan. So I don't know. But you're looking at a guy making $150, $200 a night for two, three, maybe 3 nights a week, mostly 2 nights a week, trying to supplement that with the office job at Carver W. Reed, which I had left eventually when I became too busy with wrestling. But when I'm looking at it, I probably would have took a lot less than I deserved and probably would have gotten more time than I was comfortable with. But that's what guaranteed contracts kind of looked like back then. If you took them, I knew WWE offered opportunities. They were just getting into a little bit of guarantees. I believe we were right around the time that Mark Merrill was that first guy that got the guaranteed contract, if not long after that or around that time. So we weren't even educated on that, about what that would look like. So if you're talking about like, even if you said 1,000 a week guaranteed or 750 a week guaranteed, no matter how much you work, I probably would have took it because I'm making 400 a week. So it would almost minimum doubled my money. So I don't know. I would say that's a toss up, but it would have been, knowing the way I was and the way I am now, a lot less for a lot longer than I was comfortable with.
Just to
You're smirking at you're still smirking at the blank contract.
Yeah, I'm astonished by it.
Did
anyone else did you know?
I did not even want to tell you. I wanted your reaction live, but I figured we would have to take a break or something.
I'm just like, huh? But as we say, that fellow with the comment with the wrestling business, maybe even more right than even he knew, because I can sort of cast my mind back 20, 25 years ago to when I was a teenager and, reading all this stuff and sort of just how the mentality was through the medium of, early shoot interviews and newsletters and that kind of thing. But in 2024, when you're so divorced and, the money's better, workers' rights and stuff like that for the most part are better, or at least the same, I guess. It's just more astonishing that someone would say, "Here we go, just fill this in later. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it all, buddy." Did he ever, to your knowledge, ever get anyone else to sign a blank contract?
No, not that I mean, this is still the era where nobody really talked about their money. People now in 2024 have the benefit of Maven and other people talking about these things very openly. But if we were in wrestling locker rooms, I would still think it exists that you don't talk about other people's money publicly. Football does that, other sports. You'd never talk publicly about someone else's money. And in wrestling, it was really, the promoters had, and maybe still have, the best setup. They can do things to divide the talent, turn the talent against each other, never form a union, never have any kind of camaraderie to go at the company and maybe strike or sit out at WrestleMania. That's never going to happen. And they have people afraid to even tell people the truth about how they're getting screwed over, for fear that someone else is going to tell to stand on their throat to get a little bit higher. And it was so toxic. It was a toxic epidemic of that back at that time, no matter what company in the business. There's a certain level of respect put on not talking about other people's money, but the boys should kind of see, like, what's the gauge for somebody in my part of the card? If this dude's getting 300 grand a year and I'm getting 75 and we're working each other in a storyline for 6 months, that's not fair. You don't think the truth. I say it in life. The truth is in your actions. And in wrestling, the truth of how they perceive you and what they're going to do with you is attached to the guaranteed money. Johnny Ace, the only arguments we rarely ever got into back and forth where we just kind of walked away, when the contract came up and he would say that BS line of, "Hey, just sign it. Don't worry, you'll make more." And I'd be like, "Well, just guarantee me more." "No, you'll make more." "Well, guarantee me more. If there's no chance that you're going to lose out and I'm going to get 125, 150, 200, which I never sniffed more than 1 year in my 10 in WWE. That line there is just, you have to sometimes know when to walk away, at least to keep your pride and know that at least I can earn this much doing my own thing. That's the beautiful thing in 2024 that I didn't realize even up until maybe 2016 or 17 when I started really doing my own thing.
We are going to leave Paul Heyman there, but trust me, in a future episode, glug, 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 he's going to be coming up again. I'm absolutely sure.
Well, Tommy Dreamer wanted to leave him right in the middle of WrestleMania 17.
How the heck have I just missed that?
Yeah,
for goodness sake. I completely skipped that over.
We're a team.
Damn it. Right. Okay. Pardon me. I did this before. It's like, there we go. Smack on the back of the hand.
You know why you're becoming so forgetful? You haven't picked that pipe up in an hour. It's an integral part of the show now.
Well, apparently so. Sorry. So, based on what you've just said there, we've missed a story there, dear boy. Tommy Dreamer and Paul Heyman. So Paul Heyman has just come back come back. He was never in the company, was he? No, he was never signed with WWF. He comes to the WWF. He's signed. He's the new commentator. He also commentates for WrestleMania.
He was working with WWE for years and years and years. So he was officially on camera in the company, but the company was subsidizing everything. And Vince was working with Paul. Paul was working for Vince. And that's another thing. He was getting a paycheck and he was getting financial support from Vince McMahon. And the company still couldn't survive. So that's another mystery right there. Where did it go?
Yeah, he was getting like $1,000 a week to sort of, because Tommy Boy Records, I believe, was sponsoring every match that Too Cold Scorpio was involved with, right? And it was like $1,000 a week. And when Too Cold jumps to the WWF in '96, he becomes Flash Funk. And then essentially Vince subsidizes ECW with $1,000 a week, what they lost with the sponsorship money. But then also from different people, including you, from what I've heard, that Vince was actually giving more than just $1,000 a week to keep ECW afloat. He was also sending them, for the most part, complete bums like Brackus and Philip Lafon and the other guy.
Oh, Doug Furnace.
Not that they were slouches in the ring, but they had no personality and they never got over in America. So basically just stuff that people WWF couldn't do anything with, or prospects like Droz, who would then go to the WWF
Or
later.
the most famous one was when he sent Al Snow down there, and it was Al Snow with Head. And that was the biggest success of that relationship, in my opinion.
Funny you should mention that, because when I interviewed Al, he said it more than once to me, and I'm sure he said it on other shows as well. He said he knew that he'd fallen out of favor with Paul Heyman when he just wrestled Shane Douglas at, I can't remember what pay-per-view it was like April.
It was actually in Pittsburgh, 98. I believe. It was the one-arm man. The one-arm man
match. And they just redone the ECW Hardcore TV intro, and he was not in it. So it was like I was just in the main event. I've been doing a main event program. I'm an integral part of the show. I'm not even in the intro. So he knew there and then, I'm done. And plus, he was already hired by WWF anyway.
Yeah, Al's run in there at the end was basically the alternate ending to The Fugitive, where the War-On Man actually killed Dr. Kimball. That was that was Al and Shane.
Just as a complete weird callback, I haven't watched Scrubs in years. And you know the janitor in Scrubs? If you ever watched it.
Yeah, I do. It's a good show.
He's the police officer who's in the train.
Oh, he is. Yeah, the one-arm guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Kimball. And then he dies. But that clip from The Fugitive plays in an episode of Scrubs. So in the Scrubs universe, he is the actor who appeared in The Fugitive briefly.
Oh, a bit of comedy inception right there.
Yeah. I know, yeah, just like a joke within a joke within a joke.
Okay, the murder-suicide story. Let's do it.
Yeah, Tommy Dreamer, Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman's at WrestleMania 17. And unbeknownst to him, apparently, he was nearly assassinated. So what's the story with this? In fact, just before we get to it, what was Tommy Dreamer's mindset when ECW was faltering and then eventually collapsed? Because was he just too in the Matrix with ECW?
Well, the thing with Tommy is when people say the heart and soul of ECW, hey, it's not just, hey, this is a gimmick. This is like today's wrestling world. Let's just attach this thing and see if it catches on. Tommy was the heart and soul of ECW. Tommy sacrificed a lot. Everybody did. Tommy was running the merch out of his house. Tommy, I believe, also facilitated and financed and bought the ring truck. Tommy was also the one of the people charging credit cards and going into financial, pretty much destitution for the company. Tommy was sacrificing a lot out there. Everybody did, but I think Tommy edges out a lot of other talents that sacrificed everything, not to mention his body. His body and some of his most formidable money-making years were sacrificed physically with what he did to supposedly to do good business for Paul and ECW. I want you, because I don't have every step or every detail of the story. Do you have anything pulled up where you can read? Because Tommy has talked about this. So this isn't speaking out of turn, out of line. This is based on what Tommy has said himself, correct?
Yeah, so I believe he may have told the story on the Steve Austin show. He may have said it elsewhere as well. But essentially, his plan was he was going to WrestleMania 17 in the crowd, and he was going to sneak up on Paul Heyman and shoot him live on pay-per-view and then kill himself.
That's pretty much it.
Has he ever talked to you about this or ever expressed an interest in murdering Paul Heyman?
Yes. I mean, he expressed an interest in that while we were both in ECW. So this goes way, way back, and maybe he didn't verbalize it to Paul. But yes, this was absolutely, and this wasn't something like, he's pulling the thing, the device he's going to use for the axe that we talked about out of his bag and say, I'm going, Stevie, to do this, because obviously we would have stopped him. But this is after the fact. Now, there was probably part of me that wishes that happened before my match there, where I came out and they cut me off and they squashed us in the 6-man. But I'm being very funny. I'm glad it didn't happen. There's nobody that deserves to, and thank God Tommy didn't do it to himself, because he's still somebody that should be in the business and should be alive today for that matter. But that's absolutely accurate. Now, the funny part is, and it's not funny, it's just weird to me, with that level and that amount you're willing to go, how far you're willing to go at WrestleMania 17. Then you turn around and you're sitting there at some WWE sit-down thing in a roundtable discussion with Paul, and you're crying and you're putting him over, and you're talking about how much you hated him at the time and everything, but you're best buddies now. This is the strange, could we call it the Paul Heyman effect? Because and that's some of the comments too that we talked about. There's many people that said, like, well, what is it with these ECW guys that this guy screwed him over? The checks are flying over Texas and got lost. I was there personally for the FedEx number where he said, just add the 2 or 3 numbers at the end, whatever you want to add, or because the checks were FedExed and all. Like, Paul couldn't survive in the PayPal ETF world where things get transferred instantly. It benefited him to be in an analog civilization. So, but the Tommy Dreamers and everybody else, you can include me with that, because I still say I try to parse it, separate it, that the mad scientist, the creative genius, with the extremely, no pun intended, flawed person, the flawed human being that did a lot of people very, very, very wrong. And to have Dreamer sit there, like I said, I have no desire to even pick up the phone, or if he's calling, or if I bump into, hey, Paul, how you doing? Maybe not even a handshake, but not ghosting him, but not wanting to be around him for 1 second longer than I have to. But these guys, like, I would say girls too, maybe Dawn Maria sees them, she hugs and kisses them or whatever. This is a strange Stockholm syndrome, the Jim Jones, Jonestown effect, whatever it is. We've done everything but literally physically drink Kool-Aid. But in every metaphorical sense, every person from any point, or even in 2024, there's still guys and girls drinking this Kool-Aid from this guy that shame on, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 900 times. Can you do it a few more hundred times? I guess I don't know what the saying would be. So the strangest part is this person, Tommy Dreamer, wanted to do this to Paul Heyman, and now they probably talk on the phone regularly. It's what a weird world we live in.
But they laugh. So many people, they say it with a smile on their face. Oh yeah, Paul owed me $50,000. I was in the hole and couldn't make rent and stuff like that. But man, I tell you what,
what a time to be alive.
A lot of people absolve. What a time to be alive. But he gave me this. Even you've said it. But he gave me this. He invested time and energy into me as well. But I mean, time and energy at the same time.
I can never survive. See, that's why I said I'm in a different position than all these guys. Shane Douglas had a family. Everybody else had some kind of, say, mortgage, car payment, other things. I was pretty free and clear. I didn't have any debt, and I didn't have any money either. But the pay he was giving me, if he had turned around and said, open up a credit card, start running it up and renting buildings and renting cars and doing the plane tickets and all, I'd probably be like, I don't want to do that. I'm sacrificing my body. I'm not making any money. I realized ECW, and I did realize I wasn't going to be an ECW lifer. I didn't think my body could hold up the length it did. But I knew I needed to go to another company, if not in 97, eventually. This is where I was going to get noticed and hopefully be perceived as a talent that was worth 100, 200, 300,000 a year and be figured in. I did not have I'm here in ECW until the day it goes out of business. I could not financially, nor could my body afford to last that long. I separated the actual things. We talk about or touch on about the things with Raven and the things, in that episode, and he's still not happy with me. I can say he's a creative genius. I can say I wouldn't be where I am today talking like we're talking without people like Raven, but it doesn't, how should I say? It doesn't make him immune to the things that he is also as a human being. I can differentiate that because I want nothing to do with the human being, and I can appreciate what he did as a mentor.
We shall not only just say negative things about Paul, I suspect, because, maybe beyond Vince McMahon, he's maybe the most complicated character in professional wrestling today.
How many computers do you think he has in his brain?
I don't think he's got one where he finds shitting on women acceptable, probably. But we never know.
Well, if he did, it would have been one night stand with NDAs. We would have been clued in, like Vince had pitched originally.
Yeah, for goodness sake. I guess so. I think he's probably got at least two brains. The finance one, which doesn't work properly, and then the creative one, which works very, very well. And speaking of which,
I was going to say, I'm sorry, just to finish it up. Psychologically, if anybody out there is a psychology major or somebody that has a practice, I believe if there hasn't been already, there could be a lot of term papers, thesis. You can make your whole college PhD off of Paul Heyman because there is a level of compartmentalization and plausible deniability. There's obviously some kind of disorder that when something leaves that person's mouth, they believe it to be the truth. And I believe every wrestling promoter and a lot of people in the wrestling industry do have that kind of, I guess it's a form of narcissism in a way, or whatever the term or the medical condition is. Think about when people have that alternative reality, that narrative in their mind that they know it's false, but the minute it comes out of their mouth, they believe it from that point on to be true.
So for any psychology majors out there, put it in the comments, would you? And then we'll sort of ascribe that condition, that affliction to him for next week's episode, future episode. There you go. We're not going to let Paul Heyman entirely off the hook, though. We're going to say something nice about him as a performer, at least. But I thought, well, we can't just talk about Paul Heyman as a manager, as an advocate, as he would say, because manager in 2024 is passé. So he basically made his own term and made it work for him. But he's essentially the same thing. He's a manager. So I thought it would be nice to discuss the greatest managers of all time. Wrestling fans love a list. Humans love a list. And you are a fine person to give a list, a wrestling historian in your own right as well, I guess, to a point. And I'm going to give you a bunch of names, and we're going to do it as, bear with me, everybody, because people have complained about SADBC. But that's like a really common thing in like workout videos and, rankings and stuff like that. But so what I thought we'd do is we go A, B, D, C. And that, as far as A's the best, D's the worst, or not very good.
Did you leave B
and
out?
Then from, did I?
I thought you said A,
B, C, D.
I think you said A, D, C, E or something.
Oh, whatever. For God's sake.
A, B, D, C.
Edit this, Chris. A, B, C, D. I've got a cold, man. And then from the A's, we'll choose the top 4 for the Mount Rushmore to the S category, and then blah, blah, blah. We'll work from there. So I'm going to give you a bunch of names. You rank them from A to D. That's right.
Got it.
And you tell me essentially what you think of them as a performer in a managerial sense only, not as a wrestler, not as a commentator, not as anything else.
You want to know, when this came up, I was going to actually ISO the audio of Jericho saying you just made the list when you brought the segment up. So maybe next time I'll have it ready on the soundboard.
Chris, do it.
You just made the list!
Oh, I don't know.
There you go.
If he's
It's
done it, he's done it there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
Number 1 is from A to D, Paul Heyman.
He's definitely an A. Although, the thing with Paul, I put him at an A because when he was Paulie Dangerously, he was your standard run-of-the-mill loudmouth manager and managed to reinvent himself and put the same twist, the same character in a different twist, I should say, with the Advocate, with essentially being an agent for Brock Lesnar than Roman Reigns. People can criticize the promo. The promo is about as repetitive and just run-of-the-mill with my name, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul. You can recite it. It's memorable. It's a catchphrase in itself that's much longer, but people react to it, and Paul knows how to get a reaction out of the fans. He always did, and he always will. So I would definitely put him as an A. There's no flaws because he can cut a promo on his own and get himself over, and more importantly, he can get a talent over that does not talk and facilitate the points needed to get the talent over and put himself in the background at the same time.
Next one, I've got something to say. Judge Jeff Jones, an ECW original as well.
The only reason I would put Jeff in this category is because he took a little bit from Cornette, a little obviously from Paul, because Paul was there producing them. He took a little bit out of that. But you're putting the names that are in here. We have to do this because it's only in comparison to these names. He's a D. He's a D because he's very one-dimensional. He didn't do very much. It was too much on the nose. He wore the judge's robe, the gavel.
Well, yeah, he just looked like a dude where he looked like an indie guy wearing an outfit.
He was somebody that the promoter gave a spot to do something. He did it to the best of his ability. He didn't fit with Mike Awesome or anybody else who was kind of shoehorned into there. He might have made between a C and a B because of the effort he put into for going from a referee to a manager. But I dare say Teddy Long did a much better job going from a referee to a manager. But when you put him in this list, he's got to be at the bottom. See, I got a D.
Jim,
you complained last time. Now there's a D.
No, that's a very fine answer. I mean, if I can just say A, B, C, D in the right order, because I mean that might be second best in my
Are you
mind.
dyslexic? Do we need to have somebody else comment below who handles that condition?
Let's hope so. I could use all the help I could get. Next one is Jim Cornette.
No, absolute A. A. A different flavor of Paul or anybody else on this, but you had 2 guys. Actually, you would say 3 guys because Stan Lane did do an intro for Cornette. He is 5 or 5. We'll put 4. See, I'm A, D, C, A, Z there. So basically, Dennis Condrey, Bobby Eaton, and Big Bubba Rogers never talked. Stan Lane did the intro. Jim Cornette got talents over that did not even utter a word for years. That's an A. And if you want my guess, just a spoiler, he's on the Mount Rushmore. He's in the S section too.
Next one is the genius, Lanny Poffo.
I would give the genius a B because he was a worker. He was meant to protect Mr. Perfect. Now, the Mr. Perfect and genius thing, that was shoehorned in a way, but it kind of worked because he was set up to protect Mr. Perfect to a certain extent. And he had a great match with Hogan on Saturday Night's Main Event. I'm sure Lanny talks about it. Probably the greatest moment of his entire career. And I don't blame him. I'm jealous. You know what I mean? You get to work Hulk Hogan and I'm sure the payoff was pretty good too. So I would give him a C just because it just didn't fit. The genius as a wrestler, if he took the Leaping Lanny Poffo poems, became a wrestler, basically the genius was what Dean Douglas should have been. That's the way I look at it. But as a manager, once again, with everybody on this list, he doesn't go into the top two nor the Mount Rushmore. Rest in peace, Lanny, a great guy too, really cool guy.
Yep, I interviewed him as well. He's a very nice man. Now, there are valets and then there are lady managers. I've sort of just used my brain to sort of figure out which of the two I've decided. So someone like Sable wouldn't make it in, but specifically Marlena would. Marlena Terry Runnels.
B. A B. You got Goldust, the Hollywood production. She's his director. I love it when they don't call it managers. When they don't call them managers, it just has a little extra character depth and it just has a little bit more like I can sink my teeth and I can grab onto the gimmick because it makes sense. I didn't make it an A because she never talked. She never got him over outside of the director. She didn't need more than what she had anyway. It was perfect. So no pun and maybe a little pun intended, Mr. Perfect. Still watch that match the other day. I mark out for it. It's awesome. But Marlene is a B just for the fact she did not have the element to talk to get Goldust over. So that's why she got dropped down to that.
Next one, Sunny Tammy Sitch.
That's a tough one. You know why? I can't quite put a letter on it. You know why? She was the manager, but she got herself way more over than the talent.
I figured that's where you were going with this. Yeah, she was more over than
she
the smoking
hurt the talent
guns
she managed. She didn't elevate them. She put them down because she was so over. As she stood out on her own as a female personality. She wasn't a manager. So as a manager, I give her a D. She did not get any talents over. She got herself over, but that's not the job of a manager.
Next one, Armando Estrada.
I would put him in a B because he did get the talent over. He cut great promos. He had a unique look. He's actually got a Legends contract right now, so congratulations to him. One of the nicest guys to be around. Got himself in insane shape, and I would have criticized him, and I did to his face, saying, "Dude, you're over as a manager. Why do you want to be a wrestler? You're going to taken down a notch. And if they give you the mic every week to get over, as a wrestler, you're not guaranteed the mic every week." And I was right, unfortunately. But I give him a B because he was figured into that match between Bobby Lashley and Umaga at WrestleMania, the one where Trump shaved Vince's head. But he's always been too much in the background and not, I don't know. It's weird. Oh, maybe it's the pairing with Umaga. Guy couldn't talk. He was an animal. But I saw Armando in present day. He'd be a great manager for the heel LWO and get them over. Like the Umaga thing is a monster. Then why do you have a manager? The Umaga monster, to me, it was almost like Kimchi should have came back like the Kamala dynamic.
Like a handler, rather than
exactly.
a manager.
He didn't control Umaga. He just let him loose all the time. So there was a weakness and a flaw in the relationship between the manager and the wrestler. Perfect. Thank you, dude. See, that's why you're here, dude.
Well, it's not for my spelling. I'll tell you that, if nothing else.
It's your youth and good looks. That's what you make up for.
Withering away. Like dying on the vine they are, let me tell you. Zeb Coulter. Dutch Mantel, of course.
Which version? Oh, not Uncle Zeb with the...
Not Uncle Zeb. We're going to be talking about Zeb. Uncle Zeb did nothing. Zeb Coulter.
Hey, perfect compliment to the gimmick that Jack Swagger was going to do. And then he was with Del Rio, too, when they brought him in as a team, right?
Oh, that was terrible.
It was terrible.
Yeah, he was with Del Rio. He was with Cesaro as well for a brief period.
Well, you think about it. Based on his promos and, you know what I mean, everything they did with the, you know, the hand on the chest and everything, I saw some of the comments during story time, and especially during the election cycle, they were burying Dutch for being a Trump supporter. They believed the gimmick. So that's why I put him in an A. And Dutch has always been a great talker, but that Zeb Coulter thing on a mainstream casual fan stage in WWE, man, he shined, and he got Jack Swagger over, who admittedly, I'm sure, does not cut a great promo.
Next one is a bit of a funny one, really. More of a territorial hit than when he was in WWF or WCW, maybe. Oliver Humperdinck.
I give him a B because he never had the ability to showcase his talents as a manager in WWE in a casual fan type of exposure. So I give him a B.
I mean, he did. He was briefly there. He managed Bam Bam and maybe one other.
But he's not a babyface manager. He looks like the manager. He looks like a short, fat guy with a loud mouth that you want to see someone put their hands on him. So when he managed Bigelow as a babyface, and Bigelow didn't even need a manager, dude.
Do you remember for months beforehand, they had like, who's going to manage Bam Bam Bigelow?
It was the sweepstakes, like Savage did with Elizabeth eventually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that, dude. I actually love people trying to sign a wrestler. I wish they would do that again, but there's no managers.
Next one is Harvey Whippleman. Now, this can be WWF. It can be Downtown Bruno in Memphis, which
I like Downtown Bruno better than Harvey Whippleman. A lot more of your classic skinny loudmouth as opposed to Humperdinck being a fat loudmouth guy. You want somebody to beat this little loudmouth up. Harvey Whippleman, I would say, is probably, man, when he managed Sid, it didn't make sense because Sid could cut a promo. So if you're talking about Downtown Bruno, I would give like a B. Harvey Whippleman, I'll give a D. Because he didn't add anything to somebody like Sid. He was a loyal employee that Vince, to his credit, gave him something else to do and gave him a paycheck. He did a serviceable job as Harvey Whippleman, but he didn't. And like I'm saying, this list, and people on Patreon will see the full list with the show notes. If it was standing alone, if it was like Sid's best manager or who was one of the best managers in Memphis, Downtown Bruno's right there. But in this body of work, I got to put him at a D.
Ted DiBiase as a manager. It could be WCW, it can be
$1 Million
WWF,
Corporation.
$1 Million Corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would you, now him with the NWO is just like cashing a check. I'd give him an E if there was an E.
Well, he did manage the Steiners as well, but not very memorable. Let's just stick with the $1 Million Corporation.
Strange time with a lot of guys that were just kind of thrown in that. As a manager, getting these guys over, I'd give it a D because Ted was more over than all of them. Not his promos, not his effort, not getting the $1 Million Corporation gimmick over. He didn't get it. He was the most, it was a trap. It's a trap, just like Star Wars. He was the most over one. The manager can't be the most over one in a group of guys. So it's a D.
I'm glad you said that because I've never liked Ted as a manager. A great wrestler, but as a commentator, no. As a manager, he got himself under. He's like Sonny, but he didn't get himself over either. Just everyone got worse.
The gimmick brought everybody down.
Yeah, I never enjoyed that. Next one is someone we brought up earlier, Teddy Long.
This is when he went from a referee and then managed Doom. Is that the manager?
Now, there's two different versions.
See?
There's the WWF WWE one where he's managing Rodney Mack and Mark Henry and quite a lot of people, actually.
Yeah.
D'Lo Brown, maybe? And then there's the original WCW Peanut Head with Doom. And then in the mid-90s, he was managing proper scrubs that no one even remembers. But
when he was a babyface manager after the fact.
And he was enormous.
Teddy worked out like a fiend, dude. He still does a ton of cardio. He's in great shape. You'd think Teddy's probably 50s, 60s. I think he's in his 70s or something.
No, he's 70s, yeah.
Yeah, looks great. Still with it, all that stuff. Okay, let's break. Which one would you pick for me to give the letter to?
77. He's nearly 80.
God, please let me at 60 be in that kind of shape. Which would you pick? You got to parse this a little bit for me, James, and tell me which version.
Oh no, let's split it into early WCW and let's split it into later WWE. We'll forget the late WCW because he wasn't used properly.
Early WCW, where he managed Doom, was his best work of all. I would give that an A. The babyface thing is a wash because he never got anybody over, so we won't say that. Him managing Rodney Mack was really cool with the White Boy Challenge, which I lost one of those. On Heat, no less. I would give that a B. So he can be in two spots. This is where it becomes like, where do we put him? So if you could put something in there, Chris, where Teddy Long WCW B, Teddy Long WWE.
No, that WWE
the other way
is Doom.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, I can already see this being a two-parter.
God, these
so
letters
we're
are
going to
killing
plow
me,
through
dude.
this.
These letters are killing me.
Struggling. I know we are. Next one is Slick.
We're going to pause for 2 seconds. You just said the name. How many people, including myself and James, have the Jive Soul Bro music video playing in our heads? A. Ridiculous, over the top, cut great promos, gets called back for nostalgia and gets one of the biggest pops. People still remember Slick. He's an A.
With the Daniel Bryan wedding. He was amazing in that.
Also, he was backstage at one of the WrestleManias too, with Ted and the other people.
Next one is Vicky Guerrero.
This is a tough one because, once again, she got herself more over than the talent, even with Edge. The boos were for her, not for Edge. So I would have to give her a C. Dolph Ziggler, same thing. She was more over than Dolph Ziggler as a heel. But great work, so that's why I put her at a C.
Paul Ellering.
You're talking about Road Warriors, not the Final Testament.
Yeah. Yes, the Road Warriors.
This isn't.
He does nothing in the Final Testament.
He kind of did nothing with the Road Warriors either. He didn't need to do anything, but they were a package deal from the very beginning. That's what makes me kind of pause with this. I would give Paul a B, just for the fact that when you talk about the Road Warriors, what do people usually say? Not Legion of Doom, not whatever. When you hear the Road Warriors, Paul Ellering's name comes to mind. And dude, have you ever interviewed him? I heard he's a super interesting guy.
I would love to. He's still signed with WWE at the moment, but he's someone I would love to.
He used to do the Iditarod and all this interesting stuff. He's like me. He's like kind of wants to disappear and kind of do his own thing, and he wants to be a recluse or a hermit. And he's a Minnesota guy, by the way. So the Minnesota territory produced legendary workers, Mr. Perfect, Barry Darsow, the guy who's obviously in that tub. I'm talking people to the left, the Road Warriors, Nord the Barbarian. Who else? I mean, Minnesota has produced so many legendary.
Scott Norton, Rick Rude.
Yes. Scott Norton. A ton of people. Oh, talking about Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty worked that territory too. Ric Flair trained with the Gagnes. Brad Rangan's trained a lot of these guys. Minnesota does not get the credit for that. That's right up there with the Dungeon. They would train in a barn in like sub-zero weather in a boxing ring after running miles in the snow. Crazy stuff.
Next one is Gary Hart, who never had a run with WWF, and maybe people will remember him from the early WCW days with like Dragon Master.
Terry Funk too during the I Quit match.
Indeed.
Gary Hart was the guy too. I watched the I Quit match again. When Gary Hart, and he did this a lot, he would not sell for the wrestlers. Did you notice that? Like Flair would hit him or do something. He would be like, "What are you doing? Get off me." Just for that fact. And when he cut promos, he did whatever. He got guys over, but he would never, he seemed to be a very staunch with not showing his ass, if we say, be too vulnerable as a manager. But he could cut promos and get talent over, especially in world class. That was his best work. I would give him a C. But he had flaws when it came to looking vulnerable as a manager. He was a worker before that, correct?
He was, but he was in the plane accident. He was in the Florida plane accident.
Was that the one with Austin Idol?
No. Yeah, the Austin Idol one, yeah.
That was a scary one. You should interview Austin Idol too. He's an amazing guy and has an amazing story.
He's too expensive.
I know.
That's genuinely the reason.
I got to pay $500 just to text him.
Dude, that'd be cheap, let me tell you. Miss Elizabeth. Now, I said there are valets and there are managers. Guess what? Randy Savage always referred to her as his manager.
Hey.
So she goes in Miss Elizabeth.
And a trailblazer, a pioneer, a female within the wrestling business that brought class. Never talked, by the way. The manager that got the talent over by not saying anything. The inverse of what I just said. She's the exception to the rule. And here's a spoiler. I put her up there on the Mount Rushmore.
Really?
I do.
Interesting.
You can't say Randy Savage without Elizabeth. You cannot say it.
Mr. Fuji.
Interesting. This one's tough because Fuji would get talents over. He would morph himself into the talents, whether it be Demolition with the paint face or the painted face and other things while still wearing the tuxedo, which was awesome.
There was Yoko with the kimono he'd wear as well. So, yeah.
Dare I say, here's the thing. I love the fact the first time ever that a talent had not one, but two what the hell was that? Two managers, a little bit of finger dexterity I didn't know I had. So that wasn't for you, James.
I'll tell you.
No, it was a middle finger reversed like that.
Yeah, I always say you were too harsh on yourself as well.
Oh, yeah, I was giving it to myself.
Basically just giving yourself the middle finger.
Oh, my goodness, what's going on? But I won't be harsh with Mr. Fuji because not only having one manager, but Yokozuna, I don't know who pitched this and who potentially balked at this. Cornette and Fuji both managed Yokozuna at the same time.
Do you know why?
Why's that?
Because Fuji was so bloody awful at talking that they just had to get Cornette in. Don Morocco, who as you know,
he
used
managed,
to do a podcast with.
Morocco too. Yeah,
of course, magnificent Morocco. I mean, they were a great pairing. Don didn't know what he was saying half the time.
Fuji Vice.
So it just apparently the way he talked, because he was they couldn't never understand him. So Morocco always used to call it Fujanese. So Fuji would speak Fujanese. He'd be the worst actor in the entire world, apart from Don, in all those skits. But some people are really down on Fuji. I love Fuji because he just looks the part and sounds the part. You don't want him to be eloquent.
You know what's funny is when you showed me this list, it instantly went in my mind because people want this in every episode, so I'll give it to them. By the way, haha. So here, there's going to be lots of ahas during the invasion episode that we do soon because that's one of the famous segments with Vince and Jeff. Mr. Fuji, dude, when he used to talk, like in some of his promos where he would browbeat in that mumbled Fujanese, he's the Japanese version of Tony Gurria. Hey, what are you, smartass? But he says it like mumbling more. You ever notice when Fuji would, we're going to get you, you smartass, or I can't even do the Fuji. But I would say Fuji, because of that lack of the people to understand the promos, I would put him at a B. But the longevity and the ability to evolve and pivot the manager gimmick to tailor make it to whatever, he got the talent over by putting over the outfits and the presentation that the talent was wearing.
Next one, speaking of a manager who did nothing, Arnold Skoland.
Well, he did something. He threw the talent, and that's all he's known for.
He did that.
He's a D.
And he was a babyface as well.
He's a D. Babyface managers are tough, man. It's tough enough to hear Bob Backlund cut a promo. But Arnold Skoland cutting a promo, I think they paired them together. Number one, Arnie, as they called him, was a loyal employee.
He was the guy who would give the draws out, fine you for being late, all that. Shane Douglas told the story, Madison Square Garden, grabbed him, told him, you're doing the right thing, kid. Arnold Skolin seemed to have a pretty good heart from what I understand, from what people said. But you can't convince me that it wasn't somewhat of a rib to put him and Backlund together. Two vanilla personalities.
Well, I think the reason why he was with Backlund is because he was previously with Bruno, so it's almost like a passing of the torch, legitimizing, the next babyface heavyweight. So I figure that's why Skolin was put with Backlund.
I can picture Bruno saying, "Hey, what are you, smart ass?" Bruno, man, was one of the, you want to talk about, I was shaking and had goosebumps, and Bruno was just a man's man, but also just a good quality. Like he had a good, you could feel the energy off him that he was a very, just moral, ethical man.
Next one is Sign Guy Dudley, or at a later date, he was Louis Dangerously.
I love Louis Dangerously. That would have been a B for me. Sign Guy Dudley did his part. Lou is somebody that was also loyal, there all the time, much like a Jeff Jones. And Paul, to his credit, gave him something to do. I would just give him I want to be generous and give him a C, but the Dudleys didn't need a manager, but he was rewarded for loyalty. So I got to put him in either a C or a D, because once again, the list of people we have here, it has to be of the B's, A's, and especially Mount Rushmore have to be the cream of the crop, brother. I told people I couldn't do it. The Savage impression. I have to give him a D.
This is, I promise you're going to be a two-parter, but we're going to get through all of this and then I'll just sort of release it in clips as two parts.
Where's part two coming? When's that?
No, in this episode. I'll just continue all the way through and then I'll just split the clip.
Oh, okay.
Because we've talked about this. We don't want to have clips that are like 50 minutes long. So
True.
We'll carry on with that. I'm actually going to ask this in two different ways. Paul Bearer / Percy Pringle the third, but let's just go with Paul Bearer as Paul Bearer.
Easy A. You talk about, first of all, Taker didn't talk for the longest time. Paul talked for him. Paul also fit the game. He was a real life mortician put with the Undertaker. Can't get much more authentic than that. Then he breathed new life into the gimmick. He was a babyface manager, or a heel manager, but a babyface manager, beloved. Turned him heel to be with Kane, Mankind, you want to talk about promos? Laugh at the fat man. He was.
I love it.
He was amazing, an amazing mind. The Percy Pringle was a strong B, but Paul Bearer was it, an A. And I'm spoiling it. Mount Rushmore. Do we have to limit the Mount Rushmore to 4?
Yes. Because that's Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore candidate, and then we'll kind of eliminate people.
Yeah. I'm actually circling some of the candidates as well. Very briefly, we may have to speed through quite a few of these. Tommy Rich with the FBI.
He was good. He cut a promo. He's like the Mr. Fuji. He was like Tennessee's as the language. If you don't say it's the language, it was just the fact that him and Tracy Smothers were anything but Italian. It brought heat. It brought entertainment. It brought laughter. He did his job. Getting real heat, nah, I would probably get the energy and what he did to complement the act was great. I would give it a C, just because he did bring a lot to make the whole FBI gimmick work, but he wasn't somebody, but also Tommy got himself sometimes a little bit more over than the group, and that kind of disqualifies you.
The Grand Wizard. So, were you watching WWF during the latter days of Grand Wizard's career?
Yeah, I watched a little bit from when Hogan was not Hulk Hogan that time, and the Grand Wizard was there. Blassie managed Hogan. Grand Wizard managed superstar Billy Graham, I believe. Am I wrong with that? First,
maybe during the karate days. I think he also managed. Did he manage Greg Valentine at one point? I know he managed Don Morocco.
That's probably the most
Don
famous one.
Fuji.
I think was Don.
Yeah, who managed Superfly? Jimmy Snooker until he
wasn't
turned
Skolin.
babyface.
Wasn't Skolin the babyface manager of him for a little bit?
He may have been. Who was the heel manager with him?
It might have been the Grand Wizard. Now that I'm thinking,
Yeah.
leave a comment below. I'm not sure. His was, for the time, Grand Wizard was probably the most over manager in wrestling, right? For the time. I'd still probably have to give him a C when you put him against everybody here. Very one-dimensional promos, very in-your-face. See, that's the thing with the Grand Wizard. He was normally, like, say, Don. He was more flamboyant and stood out more than Don Morocco. So that kind of brings him down a little bit. See, the manager needs to accentuate and complement the talent that he or she is managing. Savage and Elizabeth. Elizabeth did a perfect, she was Beauty and the Beast. That's the only way to put that. You can think about it in 10 seconds. The Grand Wizard with Don Morocco, I don't know. The Grand Wizard, say, with Jimmy Snuka. Once again, that's the Estrada thing. He didn't handle or control the animal, heel Jimmy Snuka. So it didn't fit. So I give him a C.
Next one, Daphne. I don't know if she really falls under valet or manager. I slipped her in with the managers because I think she just managed quite a lot of people, really.
Well,
and you worked with her as well.
Yeah, we did it. She was a patient of Dr. Stevie's and then managed Raven and myself. She also
now we're going to do something more in depth with Daphne when we talk about TNA. Future episode. I'm sorry to say it once again. So this is a very cursory A to D with Daphne, and we'll go more in depth with Daphne at a later date.
Her best gimmick was probably the Scream Queen thing in WCW.
Awful. D. Hated it. TV turning.
Well, I mean, you could say that, or you could say she had a lot of energy and effort, but then again, she didn't get Crowbar and David Flair over as much as herself. That's what disqualified her there. As a TNA manager, see, this is the thing. She wrestled too. So it's like she had another layer to her. I'd probably, just because of the list, once again, I'd have to give her a C because she was known for that, but she was known more for the wrestling part of it and doing the Monsters Ball with Taylor Wilde and other hardcore stuff. She's more known for the wrestling than the managing.
Classy Freddie Blassie.
I have to put him in an A. Talk about a former manager. You know, for the time, he was like the Grand Wizard. Too much on your nose, Mexican uppercuts, pencil neck geek, but it worked. And he was dude, as a worker, Freddie Blassie was a scary, scary heel for back in the day. Did he wrestle? Was it the matches he had were bloody, where it showed him like PWI chewing the guy's forehead? Was that Bobo Brazil that he had wrestled? Who was the one he had?
Yeah, I think he wrestled him a lot.
That was his arch rival, right?
He was, I think his biggest success was probably in California, Los Angeles territory, as well as Japan as well. So yeah, he was a big deal for a long time.
Did he wrestle that Japanese legend? What was it, Rikazan?
Ricky Dozan.
Ricky Dozan. Oh, Philly accent. My God, I just left out syllables now. Also, was it My Dinner with Blassie? When Andy Kaufman
My breakfast with Blassie.
I'm sorry, there we go. That was actually almost in some ways better than My Dinner with Andre. It was pretty crazy.
I've never seen it. Is it actually worth watching?
You know what? We might have to do a watch along on one of the episodes. Future episode.
Next one, Sensational Sherry. And she's definitely not a valet. She's definitely a manager.
Hey. Somebody that morphed into each and every person they managed, whether it be Ted DiBiase, Randy Savage, Shawn Michaels. She surrendered her own identity to become the identity of the person she needed to get over. And she was just as much Harlem Heat. She did a great job. Everybody she managed, she got over. I remember, like, you want to think, oh, did she manage Flair too, right? In WCW.
Yeah. And the Nasty Boys briefly as well.
She might be a strong Mount Rushmore.
Next one, Captain Lou Albano.
He was awesome. I put him in an A because he got talents over. Also, here's the thing with Lou, as heel and babyface. Plus, the best saying ever, like I said earlier, there's only two things in wrestling that are real: the money and the miles. Captain Lou. Captain Lou. He didn't go to captain school for 8 years to be called Mr. So Captain Lou, here we go. Every time Captain Lou decided to manage a tag team, they became champions. So it was always presented that when you got Captain Lou to sign you on as talent, success followed. So basically, they were telling you when a team like even Wyndham and Rotunda, which were very milquetoast back then, people said, "Oh my God, Captain Lou's managing them. They're going to be tag team champions." And we see when you get to the name, Bobby Heenan had that kind of, he gave a rub for casual fans that they knew when you were with that manager, you were elevated.
Bulldogs as well. He actually retired from full-time managing when he was still with the Bulldogs, and I think they won the tag team championships. He turned back up in the early 90s, like 93, I think, for the Wild Samoans. Not the Wild Samoans. What were they called? Rikishi and Samu.
Oh, I forget. The Islanders.
Head Shrinkers.
Head Shrinkers. That's it.
Excuse
I'm
me.
sorry.
Yeah, he turned back up for a short while.
Hey, by the way,
one.
with that, Captain Lou, I believe, managed them up till WrestleMania 2, the British Bulldogs, when they did win the titles. And that was the three different venues. And the Bulldogs were in Chicago, I believe, and won the titles there. Am I wrong? The cage match happened in LA. It was Chicago, and where else was it?
New York.
New York, I believe. So 3 different locations.
And was that the main event? I know they beat Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake.
No, the main event was Hogan
Dream
and
Team.
Bundy.
No, I mean for each venue.
No, I think what's the Battle Royal was in Chicago because it had the Bears, it had Perry and other people in there. So I don't know. I'm assuming the tag title match was the last match. The main event of the whole, it was all one show. So
yeah, Rosemont, yes, Rosemont Horizon Bulldogs main evented that section. Mr. T and Roddy Piper, that bloody awful boxing match. Although people say it was terrible.
It was not as bad as
that
Jake
bad.
Paul and Tyson, which we were going to talk about.
That was deeply upsetting. What a waste. I didn't pay any money for it, and it was still a waste of money.
You want a refund too?
Yeah, I want a refund for Nassau Coliseum, by the way. It was New York, but not Madison Square Garden. Right, next one, the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart.
Oh, I give him an A. This Mount Rushmore is going to be tough. Jimmy could talk. Jimmy as a heel or a babyface, managed guys, got them over, morphed into their characters, and the jacket, the sunglasses, and the megaphone all accentuated the talent he was managing, or the whole suit, I should say. Jimmy's another guy that's like probably 145 and looks younger than us.
With this next one, it's not only an A, it's definitely a Mount Rushmore. It must surely be, unless you're really going to surprise me, Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Yes, absolute A. Mount Rushmore candidate. Absolutely. What can be said? The Heenan family, and Heenan was the one that made Hogan what he was. Heenan's the one. Because the entire Hogan existence in the first world title run before DiBiase was, can this monster beat Hogan? It was Heenan was the heel against Hogan. And the avatars were all the wrestlers that went after Hogan. So essentially that angle was Hogan and Heenan, not Hogan and all the other guys.
Maybe with the exception of Andre.
But what got Andre to the point of turning heel?
Exactly.
Who is the one in Andre's ear? Who is the one that poisoned Andre's mind?
If people go back and actually watch like a year beforehand, it's so clever how they brought Andre back, because he was suspended and then he comes back as part of the Machines, and then I don't think there's any payoff where they unmask Andre, or maybe there is, I can't remember. And then he's suspended again, but then he comes back. And it's never explained why he comes back, because it was Bobby Heenan making the original complaint.
Yep.
And I don't even think they really explain it on TV, but if you look deeper into it, it's Bobby who's making the original complaint, and then all of a sudden he's back on TV, and then he aligns himself with Bobby Heenan. It's a really, really clever story.
That's your classic show don't tell. That's a classic show don't tell.
Next one, Francine.
Francine, I would say she made Shane add another layer to his heel character. She was excellent. She managed the pit bulls, and then we had the angle there. She did great work there. She was very green at the time. When you put her up against this list, I still got to give her a C, because she did become the head cheerleader with Shane. She added and got him more over. But when you put her up against the rest of this, it doesn't stand up. Right to censor Steven Richards wouldn't even maybe touch the B category with all these names. I'm just putting context in here. I'm not even on this list, am I?
No, you were very much wrestler manager, so I sort of didn't really add you on.
Not
And
when I
also,
was fat.
you
I
are
couldn't wrestle.
Stephen Richards,
Couldn't
so
wrestle when I was fat.
Dummery.
A D. She got herself more over than anybody else. She was part of the act with Lance and Just Incredible with the Impact Players, but she got herself more over. She was like basically like a mark that wanted to be in the business, which was a great gimmick. But she got herself way more over. And then the whole thing in WWE with Al Wilson and Tori Wilson, I don't even know. She wasn't even a wrestler or a manager there. She was just a female character, right?
Yeah, basically. Now, these are a couple of new managers, if we can say that, even though they're older, both from the Four Horsemen. Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, they both managed in AEW.
D for both of them. For the best of reasons. These guys can cut promos, make you like Arn Anderson cut that promo on Cody Rhodes about the Glock and carjacking. And I was like, holy shit. I go, Arn's kind of scary. And I wouldn't want to fight that dude in a dark alley. That's not the point. You're supposed to get Cody over. Tully, the same thing. And we'll skip ahead. Trish as well was very half-dimensional. Trish Stratus is the next name. I give her a D because her body of work as a performer so far overshadowed. If she remained a manager, she wouldn't have reached her potential. So just very, very nothing. She didn't get Albert or Test over or any of the people she managed. She got herself over.
Sonny, oh no.
This is where it's tough because Sonny, did you ever interview Sonny?
No, I've met him, but
Okay.
never interviewed him.
Charismatic, can talk, can cut a promo, especially if he's trying to kind of rib or razz somebody or whatever, or if they like poke at them. That never came across because he did the camera gimmick in WCW with Ultimo Dragon and all these other things. There were so many more things they could have did with Sonny. So I put him as a C. He fit with the gimmick that he was managing, but they never gave him the exact character to maximize that. So it wasn't his fault. So I give it a C.
Rico Constantino. He's an interesting one. He was a manager wrestler, but when I think of Rico, I err towards manager.
Especially Billy and Chuck and the wedding and all that stuff. He's back in AEW doing it. Was that a one-shot deal? I hope not.
A one-shot thing, I think, yeah.
I'd have to give him a B because he could cut a promo. He could present. He was an excellent compliment to Billy and Chuck. He facilitated the wedding, the union or whatever it was. It led to one of the most memorable moments in WWE with Eric Bischoff tearing. Did you ask Eric about that, by the way? Tearing.
No, but I'm having him back on early next year. I need to do it.
Terry, that was one of the best. You talk about WWE doing it the right way. My God. And Rico is right at the center of that. But Rico also could get himself over. So it was weird. Three guys that seemed to be not an identity between them when they did the Billy and Chuck. He was the stylist, but it was weird. So I give him a B because he made what could have been a complete and abject failure really entertaining and work. But he didn't get those guys over more than they would have gotten over on their own.
Next one. I think she's morphed sort of from a valet to a manager, I'd guess. Maria Kanellis.
I would say she's a nothing in WWE because she wasn't a manager. Her in ROH, I would probably still give a C because she did add an element to what they call the Kingdom, right? It was Matt Taven
Bennett.
and Mike, her husband, Mike Bennett.
Mike Bennett.
Mike Bennett. Just a C because the list, once again, hit the sound cue, Chris. The list, but she did really strong work. And what she did in ROH shows that WWE didn't use her to the maximum ability she had to be a character.
Johnny Polo.
This is a tough one, not because he's mad at me, but this is a tough one because he was with the Quebecers, which he did get them over and talk and do everything, but
didn't fit for me.
Didn't fit at all. You know what it was? The Quebecers were doing something in the background, and Johnny Polo has the polo doing all this, it was literally, look at me, don't look at them. So he was getting himself over. You know what? Get mad at me. He's a D.
Do you know what it is? He always felt like a Cornet ripoff because Cornet had the tennis racket, and then all of a sudden Johnny Polo's got to have every other sporting implement from the badminton racket to everything else.
I never could put my finger on it. You're exactly right. This is
because he was a rich boy.
Country Club North. He was the North. You know what? This could have been a Vince McMahon creation. We got the Southern Cornet. We'll get the Northern Johnny Polo. I never asked Scotty if he created the gimmick. My guess is he didn't, because WWE creates all that stuff. So, hey, not as bad as Stevie Polo, but he's a D.
I don't know about that. Don Callis. Or you can do the Jackal or the later variation of Don Callis if you wish.
He's an A across the board. He's now nowhere near the heel he is when he's on Twitter or podcast. I mean, he can be pretty vicious, but I'd say his charisma, his ability to think on his feet, his ability to pivot, I wouldn't give him an A because he does tend to not get talent over as much as himself.
As a manager, Harley Race.
Managing Vader and Lex Luger?
Yeah, he had quite a few charges. Barbarian, maybe?
Here's what I would give Harley a B. You know why? Because he legitimately was
teaching the afterlife.
What's that? I don't want the ghost. I don't want the ghost to beat the hell out of me. The ghost to come and stretch me, smack me as hard as he did Vader at the convention from a wheelchair. No, mind you. You hear that story?
No.
Yeah, I saw it. He was on a wheelchair. He just smacked Vader in the face, like Vader was doing something, and Harley got hot at him. Said, "Come here." They're like, "Oh my God."
Damn.
So, with that being said, that's why I'm scared to give him a D. But he is a B for this reason. Because he legitimately, I think Lex talked about this, and even Vader, he legitimately talked and taught them. I'm sorry, he talked too. He taught them how to be better workers. He was literally managing them to become better characters on TV.
Dear God, he managed Mr. Hughes and Vinny Vegas as well.
I don't remember
Super
that.
Invader, Yoshi Kwan. Yeah, so...
Chris Champion. Chris Champion is Yoshi Kwan.
And the Colossal Kongs.
I remember that.
If you remember them for 2 seconds. Right, we're nearly at the
Death
end of this,
Row
by
might
the
have
way.
been one of those guys from last week.
God, might as well have been. What a weird cast of people. He's gone from Van Vader and Luger to Yoshi Kwan. Anyway, never mind.
Well, you know what that is? I believe, this is my speculation, having Harley keep a job, giving him something to do. That's what it felt like.
Next one, Diamond Dallas Page, AWA, or I don't know if he managed in Florida, or WCW in the early days.
I think he did start out doing something in Florida for Dusty before AWA, but I'm not sure if it was a manager. Because he was probably one of the greatest workers, especially starting late in his life. But as a manager, he tried to outshine the talent. He's trying
too tall for the talent.
He's a D. He's a D because of the elements I explained. And these are the, if Chris, can put up these parameters earlier, the parameters, and I'll give him the Chris, one of those things about being a compliment to the talent, getting the talent way more over, kind of almost have to actually blending into the background. And the Diamond Dallas Page, diamonds everywhere. It does not blend into the background.
Speaking of someone who absolutely blends into the background to the point that most people have probably forgotten about him, Clarence Mason.
I love the gimmick. The lawyer gimmick. That was cool. Mm-hmm. He could talk. I think they did like a Where Are They Now on him a few years ago on WWE.com.
Yeah, he's a real lawyer. Lives in Florida. I think he might even live in Tampa. Who knows?
Yeah, we might need him eventually if we keep talking about the subjects we talk about. I'd probably give him a C. Just because he could cut promos and he could do what he did, and he's a legitimate lawyer, which is great. But the longevity, he didn't have the longevity to be able to have a body of work.
Fonzie.
Hey. A guy that was so boisterous, loud, had a whistle, and you would say in every other thing I talked about, he would overshadow Sabu and Rob and whoever else. And he worked. And he had one of the bloodiest matches in ECW or wrestling history against a woman, Beulah. And they pulled time, and it was great. But he still got them over. This is a dude that has decades in the business at this point in his career, even way back 20, 30 years ago, and managed to get other talent over. And I think because he was a referee for so long, he understood not getting in the way and when to get in the way and when to talk. Plus, he was like real life friends with Rob and Sabu, so they could be honest, I think, with each other about we need to be here. Oh, that's a little bit too much. Yeah, and Sabu didn't even talk anyway, so you only had to go back and forth with Rob. Fonzie, dude, I'm telling you, he won't make it. But if a lot of the names weren't there, you know where I'd put him. Mount Rushmore.
Fonzie's got the same problem for me as Daphne with the screaming. At some point, it becomes a turn-off when it's just incessant noise over the match. And I think Fonzie's a great manager as well, but the constant whistling during matches drove me a bit crazy.
I think he tempered as time went on. You have to go too far and then peel it back a little bit.
We've only got a few names left. Missy Hyatt, the Walking Riot.
You know, she's a girl. I talked about Sunny. This was a female manager that could get herself over to a point, but she did add to Eddie Gilbert. There was a whole thing with John Tatum in UWF, and then, you know, basically turning on him to go with Eddie Gilbert. And then her WCW thing, becoming an interviewer, and then back and forth between doing stuff with Paul, the arm wrestling. WCW, her best work was UWF, as far as, and also World Class. I'm sorry. She did a lot of great work there with John Tatum. I would put her in the B category. Not because people say she's a bitch, but because I know you were at your head. I saw the gears turning when I said B.
Well, it's just when you were giving some of the women D's, I was thinking,
She was on the level for those territories. I know what you're saying with the D. Stop it. Behave. Right there. So, but with that being said, as you would say, she was a pioneer. She was a trailblazer. You're talking about before Miss Elizabeth. You're talking about territories. You're talking about certain stereotypes that the promoters think should be featured on TV. They gave her the ball, she ran with it, and she got talents over.
Now, there are quite a few people, you know, like Sunshine and Precious and people like that, which in my mind, I lump more in just valet categories. But with Missy Hyatt, I always felt was like more in the manager role. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left. Kevin Sullivan.
He's an A.
He managed a lot of people.
He managed a lot of people. He's an A. You know what he is? He's the manager. You love this reference. We didn't get one in over 2.5 hours. And here comes your Simpsons reference. He's the dude standing like this. Even if he's managing everybody, that dude's still scary. That dude still could kick somebody's ass. But he got other talent over. It's weird whether he tagged with him, whether he talked for him, very weird. And he was a booker too, so he understood his place a little bit more. Dare I say it, he probably wrote the storylines and the promos and the angles he was involved with. He probably creatively knew where to be. So unfortunately, too, this list has a lot of like rest in peace to him, and Kevin's definitely one of them.
Luscious Johnny V.
He fit with a lot of wrestlers. The worst fit was Demolition when they switched from him to Mr. Fuji. Yeah. He's the one-dimensional grand wizard type. I'm not saying he's not over. Him and Jimmy as a tag team were incredible. The Valiants. I would say this. He's probably, with the list, he's going to be a C. Very one-dimensional.
I actually liked him more as a commentator because he would talk normally then he would legitimately get flustered, and then he would just start yelling to sort of just cover up for the fact that he made a mistake. And he'd do it all the time, but he was really amusing. I really liked him as a commentator.
You know who
Look,
else
three
was a
left.
good commentator? But he made one faux pas.
You're not going to say Johnny Polo, are you? Jesus,
No, he made a lot more than one. No, Billy Graham. He was the commentator, I believe, or it was Johnny Valiant. I think it was Billy Graham, was the commentator for when Honky Tonk Man lost the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam. And remember, he kind of like Bobby Heenan when he gave away the third man at Bash at the Beach with Hogan. He was almost giving it away and talking over. During the match, he goes, "Oh, this could be it right here. This could be over right now." Hey, don't say that. It kind of gave away the finish that it was going to be a rout in like 20 seconds.
I didn't think he was that bad of a commentator.
No, that
he
moment.
gets a lot of hate.
No, that moment, I think. No, he was a good commentator.
No, I didn't think he was that bad at all, but I always heard, oh, he was a terrible commentator. No, I've watched SummerSlam 88. I didn't think he did that bad of a job at all.
Just that moment of giving away the
stuff.
He gave away the finish right instead of reacting like, "Oh my God, I didn't think that." If he had said, "This dude had the Intercontinental title longer than anybody, and I couldn't believe it's over this quick," or "I've never seen a match this short," it could have been. I mean, it's hindsight 2020, dude.
3 more left. J.J. Dillon.
He's an A. This is a guy touching Mount Rushmore. He complimented the Four Horsemen. I don't think anybody could be the manager for the Four Horsemen besides J.J. Dillon. And he was a worker. He went to Japan. He understood. Referees and workers to become managers generally understand where they have to peel back and kind of like I said before, you have to be vulnerable. You have to know your place and get the talent over. And JJ did that. I loved when he pulled the shoe off and they would hit him and he'd be in the ropes. And that was my favorite JJ Dillon spot.
He was very good at, because obviously he was a wrestler, but he wrestled, when he did wrestle in the late years, he wrestled like a manager and he managed like a wrestler. And I think that's a great saying. It's like, as you would say, show your ass.
Yeah.
He was never afraid to do that. And he always looked, I mean, he looked out of shape. He probably was out of shape in his 40s, with the later Four
Horsemen. He always
Horsemen
had the
stuff,
belly.
but he would wrestle. Yeah, he would wrestle like he was a complete bumbling fool when he wasn't.
He and Heenan were the best ones at doing that. They were both workers. The thing, and Heenan could have been the next Ray Stevens. He had very much a Ray Stevens type of bumping and moving around. With JJ, he was maybe, if I can remember correctly, because this is during the era of Paul Jones and other people yelling and screaming.
I didn't even put Paul Jones.
That's why I said it. The pointing and screaming, and let me tell you something, brother. JJ would, you can do the JJ. JJ Dillon would talk, fold his arms, put the glasses in his mouth, and talk. It was almost like he was their lawyer or agent. He was the first manager to just talk and put them over from, like he was representing a client. That's what I loved about JJ. And Paul Jones, let's get to Paul Jones. So JJ's an A. Touching Mount Rushmore, so circle it. Paul Jones, former worker, and then worked after he managed later in his years in North Carolina. Paul Jones, this is what I loved about NWA. And I became a wrestling fan by watching NWA one morning, Channel 17, Philadelphia, Saturday morning. My first exposure to pro wrestling was NWA, which resembled ECW at the time, before ECW. 3/4 overhead Diablo shot, no commentary sometimes, just laid out. And Paul Jones and his army were trying to shave the head of handsome Jimmy Valiant. And I was like, and Paul Jones looked like the most evil Bond villain type genius. And he was just there was different types of flavors, or there was different presentation. Everybody had their own little niche on the show. J.J. Dillon and the Four Horsemen was the clean cut professional heels that like a big money contract baseball player. Then you had like the alley fight underground, MMA, like deep down dirty style that Paul Jones and Jimmy Valiant feud, and Pez Wadley was a babyface, and Paul Jones turned him. He became the heel. What was he called? Shaka. He went from Pistol Pez to, he renamed him.
Shasta?
Shasta Wadley.
Pez Wadley, yeah.
Shasta Wadley.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about NWA. It was a variety show. It was a circus. Paul Jones, I would put him in a C because of the list, and he was one-dimensional. But he could cut a promo, and he could get the talent over.
Now, you mentioned J.J. Dillon being Mount Rushmore quality. Let's go to the opposite now. The Mariana Trench of bad managers, the coach, John Tolos.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Jonathan Coachman. The coach, John Tolos, who was an excellent worker for his time, managed Mr. Perfect in the first, like the enhancement era of Mr. Perfect when he first came in. The coach, right?
Hmm?
He's got
he replaced Bobby Heenan, I think. Or did he replace Bobby Heenan?
No, Bobby Heenan might have replaced him.
Excuse me.
I would put him in a D. And if there was an E, I would put him in an E.
And the last one on the list, although I'm trying to find the name of one more who definitely needs to be included, but I can't remember his name. But we'll end on this if I can't. Baby Doll.
You know, it's funny with Baby Doll, because usually the manager has to talk to get the talent over. Tully did all the talking. Dusty did all the talking. Was she with Zbyszko for a short time? Zbyszko did all the
Very, very short time, yeah.
Western States era. Western States Heritage title era. Baby Doll got the talent over by not talking. It's the strangest exception. I would give her probably around the C, the upper C, because she did get them over, but she didn't do what any of the tools a manager would get them over with. They got themselves over, and she accentuated the gimmick rather than getting them over. It really, a lot of nuance with some of these names. And by the way, all these people, most of them to a degree, are legends within the business. So this is a very, when we're talking about B and above, it's high altitude stuff that you're talking about. So even at D, the only one I would say, John Tolos didn't fit the bill because he was a worker. He was a Freddie Blassie type worker, very vicious. But he only had like a month as a manager, if that. He worked like a set of tapings and that was it.
Basically. There's two more people I've remembered. One of them I loved, The Wizard. If you remember him, he was the original manager.
Welcome to Oz, welcome to Oz, and had the monkey on his shoulder, right?
Yeah,
WCW.
He eventually would be no, in WWF. A few other people.
Oh, Curtis Iakea in the Dungeon of Doom. Oh,
yeah.
This water is not cold. This water is hot. Hogan would say. No, that was King Curtis Iakea, who was in WWE for a time.
Yeah, he managed Kamal. I can't remember who else he managed. I think he managed after the Wild Samoan when he was a single.
There was some beast within that time frame.
Yeah.
Where would I put him? I'd probably have to put him in a C just because body of work. He worked a lot in Florida, didn't he? He was a big time manager in Florida. That's why he got the WCW connection with Kevin Sullivan and all those people.
Yeah, with Mark Loon especially. They were a double act for quite a while, always trying to take over those territories, let me tell you. There's one more, though, I wanted to bring. Oh, sorry. So we've given Curtis Ikea a C. Baby Doll, did we give a grade C?
C, high C.
High C.
Like I said, with the context that if you're in a C, you're still legendary in one way or another.
So we're going to name our Mount Rushmore. So we have the names that you asked me to circle. Jim Cornette, Miss Elizabeth, Paul Bearer, Sensational Sherry, Jimmy Hart, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and J.J. Dillon. So that's what, 7, 8 names there. So if you could only name 4, who was the Mount Rushmore?
Could you go take it one by one for me, just so I could say, because I have the entire, I should have taken notes too. I'm sorry.
Jim Cornette.
Yes.
Definitely on.
Yes.
Miss Elizabeth.
Yes.
Interesting. Where are we next? Paul Bearer.
Yes. No,
Are you just going to say yes for all 7 of these, or
no, I gotta leave people out now because these 3 people were absolutely integral in getting wrestlers that could have been just drab nothing and making them legends and making them champions and making them perennial characters on shows. And Miss Elizabeth, for example, it's tough because Sherry's going to have to be left off compared to that because
Yep.
you do not talk about Randy Savage without Elizabeth. You do not talk about any of these wrestlers or wrestling in general and managers without Jim Cornette. And the other one is Paul Bearer. There is no Undertaker in this legendary status without Paul Bearer.
So Sherry was saying no.
Yeah.
Jimmy Hart,
What are the remaining names? So we have Sherry, Jimmy Hart,
Bobby Heenan, and JJ Dillon.
Bobby Heenan. It's the Mount right. The others got to be left off.
So we've got Jim Cornette, Bobby Heenan, we've got Miss Elizabeth, and we have Paul Bearer. So they are the S tier. They are the Mount Rushmore of the greatest managers in wrestling history. But if you had to pick one, who would it be?
Heenan.
How could it not be?
Yeah. So what we have now is these are the greatest of the greatest. We're talking about the greatest managers that have come along in wrestling. Some of the greatest managers. You know, we've given them marks, but all these people deserve to be mentioned in the conversation. But these are the absolute greatest professional wrestling managers amongst the greatest. So that is the Mount Rushmore.
A fine Mount Rushmore, a fine.
But I wasn't going to do Heenan just to piss you off, but Heenan's in.
I would have been agog, if you like that word. I would have been mouth agape if you hadn't said Bobby Heenan. I mean, if you said Cornette, I would have got it. But the only thing with Cornette is, and you tell me if you think I'm right or wrong about this, is Cornette can never be considered the greatest manager of all time for one single reason, is that I always thought he never had the pizzazz. He never had the sort of like Hollywood superstar thing going for him that maybe a Bobby Heenan did. You know, Bobby Heenan would be large. He carried himself more like a superstar and was the glitz and the glamour and everything of the greatest or one of the greatest eras of pro wrestling. Cornette to me was always more of a regional hit. He was always a bit more down, not down market, but, you know, he dressed down on purpose and that kind of thing. That he always had that missing from his game, I guess.
Yeah, but you would dare say the reason why Cornette could be considered to be up there is because, once again, Yokozuna got over even more by having Jim Cornette. You can talk about Fuji for window dressing and just wearing the robe and everything. It was Cornette that got him over. And also Cornette was managing meaning Yokozuna and Owen Hart as well. So he's up there because one of the greatest promos ever. If he could have adjusted or evolved a little bit into that WWE stage, he would be even greater. But he's definitely up there on the Mount Rushmore. And I would say, you know, there's managers today, if they do ever bring them back, those are the 4, male or female, that you need to look at for Cornette for the over-the-top promos, for Elizabeth of doing a lot by doing very little, you know, maximizing what you do. Then we have, who's there? I know Bobby, but who's the third one again? I'm sorry.
Cornette, Elizabeth, Paul Bearer.
Paul Bearer, surrendering your entire identity to compliment that guy while cutting promos and while going back and forth between babyface and heel with the same character with a different twist and getting the enemy over and doing that. Paul Bearer with an urn and The Undertaker, if you looked at that on paper, you would say, that's too on the nose. That's parody, right? But because of the players in it, him and Mark made it work. And I dare say he made it work even more. And Taker would probably agree. Bobby Heenan just goes with probably a mix of all of them. Loudmouth jerk, over the top dress with the Hollywood type thing, chicken shit heel, as we would say, a coward, and also almost like a sports agent. He morphed everything into one. That's why Bobby is the absolute greatest manager that will ever, not just in the past, that will ever be seen in pro wrestling.
Absolutely. Before we shut down the show until next Friday, we have one more segment for you, and it is What Went Wrong. And this is something I nominated because when we had Yokozuna's Banzai Drops, one for the enhancement talent and one for the contracted stars, a lot of people said, well, if you thought that the Banzai Drop was bad on the enhancement, you should have seen a move by the Beverly Brothers in 91, 92. Maybe, I'm not even sure if they made it to 93. If they did, it was early 93. The Beverly Brothers, managed by Lanny Poffo, the genius, and they had a finisher that they only used on enhancement talent because no star was stupid enough to ever even attempt to take this thing, and it was called the Shaker Heights Spike. So, that being said, we've got a few different clips to show you, and Stevie is going to now analyze them for you. So, Stevie, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, James. Here we have it right here. And the name in itself, I guess that's a Minnesota neighborhood or something, or where they grew up. The Shaker Heights Spike. It doesn't really roll off the tongue. Do you agree?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that, I mean, I'll say this. I absolutely hate the Beverly Brothers, not in a good way. They were so bland. Like, if you go a few years back and, you've got, as you say, the Road Warriors and the Nasty Boys and the
But these are
Rockers
Minnesota
and Heart
people too.
Foundation.
These are Minnesota guys, so they do have a pedigree to some point. Were these guys, I forget the name in AWA, were they the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, or were they some type of wrecking crew?
No, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew was Ole Anderson and Gene, I think.
No, I know that, but they were some kind of wrecking crew, or did I get them right? It was Wayne Bloom and Mike
Ball was their finisher. Shaker Heights in Ohio, apparently. Beverly.
So it sounds like the Beverly Brothers were from Shaker Heights, Ohio, which was probably a rib on somebody.
Yeah, they were the Destruction Crew in AWA, and also in the NWA, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew 2.
Yeah, and the real name's Wayne Bloom and Mike Enos, which Mike Enos, during Scott Hall's debut as one of the outsiders invading WCW, walking down, Mike Enos was in the ring for that match.
Who was he wrestling?
Brad Armstrong?
He was the Mauler.
The Mauler.
Is that?
But
is
that's
that
where Enos wouldn't get out of the ring either. He just kind of stood there, remember?
Yeah, well, did they even tell him?
That's a great point. Did they even tell him? You know what? I wouldn't want to be told about taking this finish, by the way. So, yeah, you have it right at the. Is this the thumbnail right here?
It might as well be. Oh, I'm stupid here. Sorry. Mike Enos was the Mauler. Who the hell was he wrestling then?
I don't know, but he was in the ring way, way too long, and Scott had gotten in the ring, and he was still over in like this corner right here, and Scott was coming down and got through the ropes right here, but he was standing like right there.
Yeah, Colonel Robert Parker had to take him away.
Yes, that was one of the managers. By the way, Bunkhouse Buck was
fantastic manager as well. I can't believe I forgot him.
Fantastic worker.
Yeah.
But Bunkhouse Buck was one of my favorite characters in WCW as well.
Underrated.
That was his brother.
Was it him and Dick Slater? Cousin, I think.
What was that?
Jimmy Golden. He was Jimmy Golden, wasn't he?
I believe
He was the cousin of the Fullers.
Yeah, but also Dick Slater. They teamed up. Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater, right?
Yeah, I cannot believe they were tag team champions in like 96.
Wow. Some people can't believe I was hardcore champion. I can't believe it either. See, I pulled it around and said, bury me. Don't bury them. Okay.
Oh, come off it. I mean, 86 maybe, but 96, come off it. It's the same year as the NWO. Right, okay then. So we've got the Shaker Heights Spike.
All right, you want me to play this in real time, right? We're okay?
Play it in real time. Yeah, there's quite a few of them, but just play the first one at first, and then we can analyze it.
Well, that was at the end of that. So let's go right here. Here we go. Oh. This is Marty Champagne, first name Sham, last name Payne, and the Triple H pedigree thing. This is the bump. Only from, seriously, this dude's like got to be 7 feet in the air or more. I don't know. Like when you look at this, it's like a 3D, but what do you expect? Like, here's the thing. I'm going to just go technically right here. You're setting them up for like a 3D, right? Or like a shatter machine, if FTR would do it. Wayne Bloom is jumping up in the air too. Now this dude here, He has him right here. Okay? I know they're trying to pancake to where he's flat. So he's coming straight down in a flat sense. He's already off the mat. Look at that. This guy's way high. So the trajectory being that high, and then the guy is coming down that way and eventually down that way, it's just not a move. Like, who came up with this move? Look at that. Sideways. He's not even being pogo sticked like with the pen here. He's coming down, but the head is crimped like that. So you're breaking your neck almost. This is probably the second worst way to land rather than head back, chin up. It's really like, who came up with this finish? This has to be the worst thought out finish I've ever seen. Here's another one. I'm going to go around.
You can play them all in a row if you wish. This is a compilation we pulled off YouTube.
I mean, what do you expect? It's like a backdrop. See, that dude knew. Oh, you know what? Look at this. I got to stop it, though. Okay. So this dude knows what's about to happen. Comes up. He wants to take a flat bump. What does Wayne Bloom do? Grabs him by the hair and pulls him down. You see that?
Is he even trying to like twist his neck like sideways?
He's jamming his head to make sure not that he takes a face bump, chest bump, stomach bump. He is literally trying to spike the top of his head. Now, I don't know. We talked about the Yokozuna one. Was something said in the back? Because these are all rough. This one in particular looks like the guy is resisting that. He might have saw the first two or three. It doesn't want to take that. And Wayne Bloom's like, no, and literally snatches his hair and jams him down. Look, he didn't let go until he hit the mat. And that guy might have landed the best way on that left shoulder. That's BS, dude. That wasn't terrible, but still terrible bump. So I don't know what can be said about it. I'm going to go back to that one. See, there are different ones. This is the one right here. Is that?
But they're not an accident. That's the thing. None of them are an accident. This is the way that it was intended to go, which I find just absolutely insane.
Yeah, I would agree with that. My point with this is, number one, you don't just come up with the finish. They didn't do this finish in AWA, as far as I can remember.
They did. I actually found a clip where they did do it.
Okay.
But once again, it was always against enhancement talent, not anybody with
So what's the point? The basis for a finish, the number one basis for a finish is, can you do it to, I can't even say, I'm looking at this. This is complete crap. Can you do the finish? Number one, safely to everybody. Now, whether you're going to put some stink on it like Yokozuna or anything, but can you do the finish safely? And can you do it consistently looking as good as possible? In other words, can an enhancement talent and also a roster guy, no matter what place on that card, can they take it the same way with the same bump and make it look just as good? Even here, all the bumps are rough, but nothing is the same. It's not like a power bomb or a stone cold stunner or a DDT or, which you can take in variations, but you know what I mean. This is just, look at him hold onto his head. He's holding onto his hair, pulling him down and purposely spiking him into the mat. Now, I don't know these guys from anybody. I met Mike Enos, I think, in WCW. You had said that they have a reputation for being nice guys, but what's this? This is awful. Even here, this guy has no hair, short hair. So I'm going to grab you by the back of the neck and hook you like a can opener in MMA and bring you right down.
There strikes me as that there is a potential way of doing this safely, or at least safer, and
It's the
they're
3D.
disregarding that.
The 3D where you grab the guy in a diamond cutter, or see, this is the problem. These guys are doing the finished and enhancement talents, right? This is during the era of monsters still in WWE. Can you even vault a guy up that high to pull him back down? And dare I say it, why would you? This is a combination of moves between you do a backdrop, but also like 1, 2, 3 kid, Lightning Kid, Sean Waldman took the best one. Michaels too. AJ takes a great one. You throw them up in the air, they flop, face bump, stomach bump, chest bump. The other one is the X Factor is this. Boom, face bump, chest bump, stomach bump. This is one of those indie finishes or spots where it's like, hey, you know what's cool? Or you know what hasn't been done? There's the reason why it hasn't been done. And no, it's not cool. Because guess what? You just wasted however many weeks or months of squashing enhancement talents and getting yourself over. But guess what happens after that, James and everybody? You wasted all this time to establish a finish that every person on the roster is saying, no, I'm not taking that. You've just pigeonholed yourself and that's why the Beverly Brothers, they had a good look. They could cut decent promos in AWA. They were big dudes. They were Minnesota guys, which those guys usually get used pretty good in WWE. You basically pigeonholed yourself and limited it based on this finish. Whoever came up with it, did these guys a disservice and did the enhancement guys a great disservice. I hate that. Dude, you were totally right with the Yokozuna. I caught myself in the bubble, being institutionalized, being indoctrinated to try to rationalize the type of behavior to hurt people in a 2-tier society, enhancement and main roster. Can I say it? This is bullshit. And this era of wrestling is absolute bullshit. And you're absolutely right. Anybody with a mind and common sense in the real world would look at this and say, these guys are jerks. That's not the point of the business. So they could be nice guys, but they literally killed their WWE careers, not just enhancement talents physically. They killed their careers by pigeonholing themselves with a finish nobody would take. Sorry for that tangent with that.
No, absolutely. I don't think there's enough anger for that because that is just crap. It really is. I mean, it looks like they're trying to paralyze people in real life, and it's ridiculous. I've got a quote for you. This is from Lanny Poffo.
Well, I was going to say too, real quick.
Okay.
I will be real quick. I promise. They can be whatever, but you are trying. You're grabbing them by the back of their neck and their hair and jamming them down to make sure you're going to take this bump the most dangerous way you can take it. That's what I get from that. It's careless, it's irresponsible, and it's quite frankly embarrassing to the business.
So Lanny Poffo's quote, he had a podcast some time ago for about a year or something. And he said this when asked about the Beverly Brothers. He said, very nice people. And then he said, I didn't like the fact that they used a move called the Shaker Heights Spike. And a lot of the jobbers, and then he explains jobbers and enhancement. He doesn't like the term. They were afraid to take the move and they took it anyway. And they hurt a few people. And the word got out that the Shaker Heights Spike is no fun to take. Well, my point is, if you're going to do that to the enhancement talent, how come you never did it to Fred Ottman, John Tenter? How come you never did it to the Powers of Pain, the Legion of Doom? All these guys, apart from the fact they're huge and you couldn't do it anyway. Well, you did it to the enhancement talent and you didn't care if you broke their necks. Well, that pisses me off. You do not take a guy in midair and throw their head down on the mat just hoping everything's going to be okay. But they already hurt a few people and they didn't mind doing it and they didn't mind hurting more people. And I thought to myself, well, every time somebody says, how do you like managing those guys? Oh, it was better than having to work with them on television. I never had to take the Shaker Heights Spike. That's not a move. That's a disaster waiting to happen because if you hit your head just right on the mat, you're going to break your neck. And then you're going to say, you're sorry, and sorry doesn't cut it. Not when you break your neck.
I forgot. You reminded me. He did manage them. Yeah, that's true. But how can you parse? See, there's just that 1% of still being institutionalized in the wrestling bubble. Nice guys, but they hurt people intentionally. You can say they didn't mean to, but there's some intent grabbing someone's hair and pulling them down. Where do you say, yeah, but these guys also, this is, I guess, in a way, not knowing psychology and not knowing the way the business should work, even if they had years of experience, and also at the same time, a bit of wrestling karma. You did all these things, and then what ended up happening? The most you ever did, even for a short time, was put those names that Lanny Poffo talked about over because no one wanted to take your finish. Where in the world was The Office previous to the first time, and especially after the first time? You know, there's that one guy who got paralyzed in the ring with the Marty Jannetty rocker dropper. Every single person could have sued the company for this. Chuck Austin, that was the name I was trying to think of.
Chuck Austin, because there was a Charles Austin in ECW, and I always forget which one was
that was Chad Austin.
Chad Austin, I'm sorry. On that basis, we are going to shut down the show because my head is exploding.
I'm sorry.
I'm just whatever this cold has turned
into.
Did
you take the Shaker Heights spike?
I feel like I've taken one sort of on the front of my face somehow at the moment. So I'm going to leave it up to Stevie as I go and decongest myself over a hot kettle and steam my head out and try and get back to being human. But Stevie, with the Patreon and everything else, over to you.
Sure. By the way, we are going to bookend the cold open, and actually I'm going to record a separate Patreon. Thank you for each and every week. So want to talk, I'm going to do all the talking on the way out. James has 2 excellent books on The Rock and Owen Hart. Will he have a third? Probably not. He probably wants to beat me up at this point for even suggesting a third book. Also, WSI, I've been enjoying the Eric Bischoff interview. The Maven interview is coming very soon. Also on WSI, James does some commentary. He talks about Dave Meltzer and the Dutch Mantella controversy with the GoFundMe and Dave's comments. Insensitive is the most kind word I can think of about Dave Meltzer and that and a lot of other situations. Also, you can follow WSI Storytime with Dutch Mantell. Also, the Don Morocco show is still up there on YouTube and Franchise University, which I did not replace. Please do not hate me. I love Shane Douglas like a brother. And of course, mine are Stevie Richards Fitness and also patreon.com/Stevie Richards, which we're going to thank everybody in just a second as we take it out. But for episode 22 of the Stevie Richards Show, Paul F. and Heyman, thank you guys so much. See you next week, episode 23.
Once again, thank you so much for watching episode 22 of the Stevie Richards Show, and a special thanks to the people at patreon.com/Stevie Richards. Exclusive content, assets, show notes, pre- and post-production meetings between myself and James before and after the show, and also all the production meetings throughout the week, behind-the-scenes videos like filming the cold open for episode 22 of this show. We give everything to you, an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at creating everything as we grow and hopefully progress and not regress, but the name should be scrolling if Chris is doing his job, which, Chris, you do a great job. Thank you very much. So thank you once again for watching the show. Thank you to our Patreon members, and see you next week for episode 23 of the Stevie Richards Show.